Chapter 1170. Sorry, Daddy. Little Eggshell lowered her head guiltily. Daddy doesn't need your apology. Daddy wants you to tell me, why do you trust great-grandfather so much? Daddy, I'm hungry. Little Eggshell suddenly changed the subject. Nangong Quan did not allow Little Eggshell to change the subject. Instead, he said, Kair, let Daddy make things clear to you today. If you continue to be with great-grandfather, then you don't want Daddy anymore. Other kids don't have to worry about this because their grandfathers are loving, but your great-grandfather isn't. Daddy, great-grandfather is very kind. Little Eggshell immediately spoke up for Elder Nangong. Fine. If you want to choose great-grandfather, then go live with him. From now on, Daddy won't have Kair anymore. To protect you, there are some things that Daddy can't tell you. For your own good, there are some things that I can't let you do. But if you think that great-grandfather treats you better, then you can go with him. As soon as Little Eggshell heard this, her eyes turned red. Daddy, you don't want Eggshell anymore. Eggshell doesn't want Daddy anymore. How much does Mommy worry about you every day? Yet, you don't appreciate it, and you still treat Mommy with such an attitude. Kair, you should have known right from wrong a long time ago, but you're not like this now. You've disappointed Daddy. Nangong Quan was very gentle and considerate, as he said a lot to Little Eggshell. Daddy won't blame you for choosing great-grandfather. But I'm sure I'll be sad for a long time that my own daughter doesn't trust me. Daddy, I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want to. But you don't trust Daddy. You don't trust Daddy anymore. Little Eggshell began to cry and sob. Nangong Quan did not force her. Instead, he waited for her to stop crying before he allowed her to explain everything, including how much Elder Nangong had instilled in her during this period of time. He also told her that a stepmother wasn't as good as a real mother. After hearing this, Nangong Quan did not say a word, but his heart was in turmoil. Afterwards, Little Eggshell fell asleep on Nangong Quan's lap. When he finished work, he carried her home. But as soon as he entered the living room, he saw Elder Nangong waiting for him. Seeing that he was carrying Little Eggshell, she immediately said, Let me carry her. I know how to take care of my own daughter. Nangong Quan rejected firmly. But now Kair likes to stick to me. That was yesterday, Nangong Quan said coldly. Grandfather, since things have already gotten to this point, let me make things clear. Stop trying to drive a wedge between me and Kair. Kair is my daughter, so don't even think about using her as a chess piece. You'll have to step over my dead body first. Interesting. The old man chuckled. Nangong Quan ignored him as he carried Little Eggshell back to her room and placed her on the bed. But at this time, Little Eggshell suddenly sat up and hugged Nangong Quan. Daddy, I woke up on the way here. I heard everything you and great-grandfather said. Although I still don't understand what a chess piece is, I know it's definitely not a good thing. Daddy, I'm sorry. Stay away from great-grandpa in the future. Do you hear me? Okay, go to sleep. Nangong Quan laid his daughter down and waited for her to fall asleep before he left the room. However, Elder Nangong was still sitting in the living room. Looking at his back, he looked lonely and cold. This was what it meant to be pitiful. There was bound to be something hateful about him. When they thought about the things that he did and the words that he said, it was impossible for anyone to sympathize with him. Grandfather, I'm telling you right now, I won't seek revenge because I don't think the Mo family did anything wrong. I'll say it again, this is the last time I'm going to tolerate you. If you continue to hurt my family, then don't blame me for being unfilial. I am not your family. Yes, you are my family. Since you're my family, why did you hurt my wife and daughter? Nangong Quan asked. If you want revenge, go ahead. If you want to find a chess piece, there are plenty of others out there. But don't touch my family. You didn't even let go of a 5-year-old girl, let alone your own granddaughter. Elder Nangong did not respond. After all, ever since he returned to the Nangong family, he did not feel like he had received any respect. Even in this family, Nangong Quan was constantly on guard against him. Since they were incompatible, why should he force it? From now on, we are simply partners. Don't go overboard no matter what I do. After saying this, Elder Nangong turned and left the Nangong family home. Although Nangong Quan's heart ached, there was nothing he could do. From afar, Su Yuran could hear the two arguing. In order not to cause any more trouble, she hid in the doorway and waited for the old man to leave before entering the house. Don't be angry. Nangongquan took the opportunity to hug Su Yuran and apologized. I'm sorry for making things so difficult for you after marrying me. Don't worry. To prevent something like this from happening, Ningjie will transfer the kids to another school next semester. As long as they don't see little eggshell, Elder Nangong will have no reason to use her, Su Yuran comforted. Plus, I didn't seem to be of much help. I didn't take good care of little eggshell. Your job is to take care of my heart, while my job is to take care of you and little eggshell. After hearing this, Su Yuran wrapped her arms around Nangongquan tightly. However, she didn't know what extreme things he would do after his argument with Elder Nangong. Of course, Mo Ting and Tongning weren't afraid. Originally, Elder Nangong planned to use little eggshell to make a move on the Mo brothers. But now that little eggshell's plan had failed, what else did he have left? All he had left was the collaboration with an American film company. Because of their hostile relationship, little eggshell and the Mo brothers drifted further and further away from each other. It was impossible for them to cross paths. Although little eggshell was sad, with her father and mother by her side, she didn't seem to be missing anything. It was just that a good period of childhood sweethearts had come to an end just like that. But the reality was Elder Nangong had not given up on harming the Mo brothers. But he wasn't in a rush. Instead of wasting his time, he decided to take advantage of the time before the Ant Queen 2 was released and threaten them. If he failed this time, Elder Nangong didn't have the energy to continue fighting. But this time, he was going to make the Mo family feel pain. Chapter 1171. Just in case, the two brothers of the Mo family finally transferred schools. However, even after the two of them left school, the students at school still didn't know who their parents were. So, the two kids were transferred to a prestigious school near Hyatt Regency. At a school like this, the teachers didn't care who your parents were. As long as you were sent there, you would receive the best education and the most gentle treatment. For the first few days, Mo Zishi was depressed. But as soon as he integrated into the new environment, he returned to his original lively and cheerful self. After all, no one dared to look down on the scar on Mo Zichin's face, and no one dared to cause trouble for him. Every child was very polite. So Mo Zichin naturally felt the benefits of attending an elite school. At least, he got along more comfortably with his classmates. Of course, when they left their original school, little Eggshell was extremely sad. Especially when she found out that the twins had transferred schools. She immediately threw herself into Su Yuran's arms and cried. "Mommy!" Su Yuran squatted down and hugged little Eggshell comfortingly. "Don't be sad, little Eggshell. You will have new friends in the future." Sob. Little Eggshell won't make new friends anymore. Little Eggshell cried her heart out, but it didn't change the fact that the Mo family and Nangong family were enemies. If they cut off their ties when they were young, it would prevent the two families from being put in a difficult position and hurt each other. Little Eggshell couldn't tell whether she liked Mo Zishi or Mo Zichin more. To her, it was possible that she would never see the two boys that she loved when she was young again. After the kids were safe, Tongning once again placed her focus on the Ant Queen 2. She had strict expectations for every aspect of the film. In terms of effort, she didn't lose out to the Ant Queen at all. Meanwhile, after Elder Nangong and Nangongquan had a falling out, apart from work, the grandfather and grandson no longer spoke to each other in private. They also didn't see each other again. As Springfall's most important film, Nangongquan was in charge of filming Parasite. Meanwhile, Elder Nangong was in charge of the subsequent promotions and resource negotiations. Firstly, Nangongquan thought Nangongquan was too honest and might suffer a loss by dealing with the theaters. Secondly, Nangongquan's meeting with the American film company was a cover. Thanks to Elder Nangong's script, the U.S. ended up investing in a new film called The Mad Dog Crisis. The story was based on parts that Elder Nangong had plagiarized from The Ant Queen and pieced together the story. At the same time, they kept an eye on the Ant Queen 2's progress. That was the only way they could maintain the same pace. The old man is looking forward to this matter very much. He doesn't know how wonderful it will be when it collides with a Hollywood popcorn movie. Most importantly, Parasite was supposed to be released before the Ant Queen 2. After all, according to Nangang Kwan's plan, Parasite wasn't meant to compete with Hai Rui, it was meant to boost his own fame. So, the old man wasn't happy about the release date of Parasite. The old man emphasized that the film had to be released after the Ant Queen 2. This made the company's top management feel very uncomfortable. After all, the old man couldn't explain why he wanted Parasite to be released after the Ant Queen 2. Why are you doing this? You need to at least give me a reason, Nangang Kwan asked during a meeting. During the meeting, Nangang Kwan asked his grandfather, "According to our current capabilities, there's no need to go head-to-head with Hai Rui. No matter what, we aren't as professional as them, and we can't reach their level of influence. Plus, with the public's recognition of Tongning, shouldn't they wait until the Ant Queen 2 is released before looking at us? What advantage do you think we have over them? There are some things that I can't say right now. Just do as I say. If Parasite doesn't reach our expectations, I will take full responsibility." Nangang Kwan held back his anger and stood up from his desk. Sure enough, Grandpa Sheng had moved the battlefield of revenge to the company. Seeing his frustration, his assistant immediately approached him and asked, "President, do you want to speak to the higher-ups?" Nangang Kwan waved his hand and refused. "No need." "Then, are we just going to let Elder Nangang do as he pleases?" Nangang Kwan was displeased that Elder Nangang couldn't separate work from personal matters. But he was more concerned about what the old man couldn't say. Didn't he have 15 minutes of free time? Did he have to scheme against the MO family all the time just to make him happy? This is the result of everyone's hard work. I understand. Let's wait and see, Nangang Kwan instructed coldly. He wanted to win against Mo Ting head-on, but Elder Nangang always thought of using underhanded methods. At this moment, Elder Nangang was filled with regret. Why did he let a wolf into the house? Why did this person have to be his grandfather? Elder Nangang was trying to get revenge by using the hard work of everyone on the line. The more Nangang Kwan thought about it, the more he felt that something wasn't right. So, he went to look for Elder Nangang, and the two headed to the rooftop. "Give me a reason to reject the film. You need to at least convince me and my staff. It's just a delay. How will it affect you?" Elder Nangang asked. "Plus, I already said that I will make the film a hit. What explanation do I need? Who are you trying to make a pie for?" Nangang Kwan asked. "We don't want to use despicable methods to suppress our opponents. We simply want to take a solid step forward." "Why is it so difficult when it comes to you? What plan have you come up with to deal with the MO family? Have you thought about how high our costs will be if we delay the release of the film? In the end, even if you hurt Hai Rui and the MO family, we will still be struggling at death's door. Grandfather, I don't want to use my hard work as a toy for you. If you insist on doing this, then I will have no choice but to remove you from your position. Rascal, I am now the biggest shareholder of Springfall. Don't forget, I'm still the chairman. Everything is still up to me." After speaking, Nangang Kwan turned around and left the rooftop. He wasn't going to let his hard work become a tool for Elder Nangang to get revenge. Of course, Elder Nangang's constant obstruction made Elder Nangang feel even worse. Especially as he watched Nangang Kwan leave, Elder Nangang couldn't help but wonder if Nangang Kwan didn't exist, would no one have interfered with his revenge? He just needed this one chance. Why didn't Nangang Kwan give it to him? After all, this was his grandson. Why couldn't he be considerate? Chapter 1172. At that moment, Nangang Kwan did not realize the danger he was in. After all, he still believed that no matter how ruthless Elder Nangang was, he would never hurt his own family, especially not his own grandson. But don't forget, he could even force Xiao Jin to his death, let alone this grandson he barely had any feelings for. Old man Nangang didn't want to hurt his grandson, but he had to fight for this opportunity. At this time, Mo Ting was aware that Elder Nangang often interacted with the Americans, but he had no idea what they were talking about. On the surface, it looked like it was for the sake of the movie, but no one knew what they were doing behind the scenes. Faced with Lu Che's reports again and again, Tongning had already memorized the contents. So, she smiled and said, "President Mo, tell Lu Che to withdraw. Monitoring a person like this is a waste of manpower and energy. He can even create an explosion. For the sake of revenge, what can't he do?" Mo Ting's main concern was her and the children's safety. Since it's for the sake of safety, we should take more protective measures. We can't always follow behind him. Everyone needs to rest, right? Over the years, haven't we gotten used to dealing with each move as it comes? Mo Ting hugged Tongning and did not respond. Seeing this, Tongning subconsciously wanted to pinch Mo Ting's handsome face. When you get serious, you immediately age a few years. Old man Nangong, it's too dangerous. We have to be careful. Mo Ting wasn't going to stop monitoring them, but he wasn't going to be as strict. Okay, I'll listen to you. It's Song Linlin's birthday today. Let's go early so the media won't block us. Okay? Tongning understood that Mo Ting liked to plan ahead, so she did not try to persuade him anymore. Instead, she gently changed the subject. Moreover, they had been very busy recently and had neglected to rest. Taking advantage of Song Linlin's birthday, they decided to relax for a night, so they drove to the sea villa that Song Linlin had arranged for them. At this time, friends from the industry had already gathered together. Most of them were artists from Hairue. As soon as they saw Tongning and Mo Ting, they naturally let them have the main seats. It's rare for President Mo to show up. You must have fun with Tongning tonight. Mo Ting didn't like crowded places like this. He would rather spend some alone time with Tongning. But seeing Tongning laughing so happily, he suddenly felt the environment wasn't that important. At Song Linlin's birthday party, she sang Tongning and Mo Ting's theme song, Follow. The current popularity of the song was enough to replace her signature song. Under the soft lighting, everyone shed their celebrity aura and began to sing a warm song. For some reason, Tongning suddenly felt like crying. Hairue had always been a big family. Ever since she joined, it had always been like this. She gave people strength. Tongning, today is my birthday, but it's also the day I've been reborn. I've never known how to thank you. So, I only have this cheap life left. From now on, no matter if you want me to climb a mountain of knives or jump into a frying pan, as long as you give me the word, I will immediately rush over without hesitation. Tongning was tickled by Song Linlin's words as she leaned into Mo Ting's embrace. Is something like this worth you being grateful for the rest of your life? Of course. Perhaps it was because Song Linlin had already had a few drinks with the others before they arrived. Her cheeks were flushed red, and her voice sounded a little tipsy. How about this? I don't need you to climb a mountain of knives or jump into a frying pan. I simply want you to give me the best room in this villa tonight. After hearing Tongning's words, everyone at the scene burst out in laughter. After all, as long as one was an adult, they would understand why Tongning wanted a room. Everyone joined in on the fun, but Tongning was not shy at all. She remained calm and collected as usual. Meanwhile, President Mo looked at his wife from beginning to end and smiled from time to time. His doting look was self-explanatory. It was so sweet that one could die from it. Okay, Song Linlin replied straightforwardly. Not only the best room, I can even give you the entire villa. Forget it. Tongning lives in Hyatt Regency. Did you think she would want this shabby villa? That's right. Everyone burst into laughter. Afterwards, they were once again immersed in laughter. While everyone was singing and dancing, Tongning pulled Mo Ting into the best room that Song Linlin had mentioned. The couple then leaned against each other in a warm and sweet embrace. Ever since those 3 naughty kids appeared, how long has it been since we've been alone like this? Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply wrapped his arm around Tongning tightly as he looked out at the endless sea. When Tongning saw the injury on the back of his hand, she suddenly realized that during the time they were filming, Mo Ting's body would occasionally be covered in bruises and scars. As a result, her heart ached. Let's stop filming after this one. It's just a small injury. Mo Ting's heart was filled with sweetness. The couple had been very close over the years, but he still treasured them. I want to set a good example for the children. You've always been like that, Daddy Ting. Speaking of which, Ting, do you think little eggshell likes Zishi or Zichin? She's still young. Mo Ting replied. At little eggshell's age, she's already old enough to like people. I'm guessing that she'll prefer our home's flamboyant son. Zishi is sunny and healthy, but his personality isn't anything special. On the other hand, Zichin is quiet, but little girls seem to like him these days. He's cold and aloof. Do you want to hear the truth? Mo Ting asked beside Tong Ning's ear. Uh-huh. I hope they never cross paths again. After hearing this, Tong Ning stood up and turned around. Just as she was inches away from President Mo, she looked at the sea and sky and kissed him passionately. President Mo, you know why I want this room, right? Mo Ting wrapped his arm around her and took the opportunity to carry her in his arms. Because I know, I can't let you down. Outside the presidential suite, a group of artists from Hai Rui gathered outside to listen in on the couple's movements. At first, there was a bit of noise, but soon it became completely silent. President Mo, how did you get here so quickly? Of course I hit you. It's obvious we moved the battlefield. Don't you understand? Just thinking about it makes me shy. Outside, a group of people were discussing what was happening in the room. Indeed, as soon as he heard footsteps outside, Mo Ting carried Tong Ning out onto the balcony. There was no one around, but it was the perfect place to be intimate. They even dared to eavesdrop on the president. Were they planning to release their next album? Chapter 1173. Over the past few days, Parasite had been progressing quite well, and Spring-Fall had already gone through rounds of promotions. The thing that fans were most concerned about was the release date of the film and when it would be released. Nangong Quan did not listen to Elder Nangong at all and decided to announce the release date as soon as the time was right. But Elder Nangong still tried to stop him. The two of them had always been at odds with each other. Even during the meeting, the two of them had argued many times and eventually parted on bad terms. Therefore, in the company, not many people really respected the old man, because they knew that he had ulterior motives. But Elder Nangong insisted that if he waited a little longer, he could defeat his opponent and make his film a hit. So why not? In the world of business, everyone was deceitful and the winner was always right. So, who cared about morality anymore? But the two men were still in the midst of an argument. So, the real reason why Elder Nangong made up his mind was because Nangong Quan did not invite him to attend the new investor conference for Parasite. In other words, he was completely excluded. After Elder Nangong found out, he almost lost his mind. He knew that there was no room for negotiation between him and Nangong Quan. There was no way they could come to an agreement. So, to stop Nangong Quan from announcing the release date, he had no choice but to make a move on his grandson. Because he used to be in the underworld, it was relatively easy for Elder Nangong to find connections. He successfully found a helper and decided to drug Nangong Quan. Today, he was actually going to use the same despicable methods that he used in the underworld on his grandson. Nangong Quan had always been wary of Elder Nangong, but when someone was up to no good, it was impossible to guard against them. Let's make our move tomorrow. I'll let you enter Nangong Quan's office early and arrange for you to escape through the emergency exit, Elder Nangong said to the killer the day before the operation. Are you sure? Are you going to make a move on your own grandson? I'm just putting him to sleep for a while. Once this is over, he'll get better, Elder Nangong replied as he smoked. But this anesthetic can also cause death. Don't worry too much. If I tell you to do it, just do it, Elder Nangong said confidently. In that case, I'm going to make my move. This assassin was not young, so he was very experienced. In this aspect, his actions were fast, accurate, and ruthless. Therefore, as long as he had enough cover, it would be a piece of cake for him to take someone's head. Meanwhile, Elder Nangong's plan was to inject Nangong Quan with a drug to make him fall into a coma. This drug couldn't be bought on the market, so he had to go through a special channel. That night, Nangong Quan acted as usual. After coaxing little Eggshell to sleep, he returned to his room and cuddled with Su Yuran. The next morning, he successfully entered his office to deal with some documents. But, to his surprise, someone suddenly appeared behind him. Before he could react, a needle was inserted into his neck. A few seconds later, he lost consciousness. The murderer had been waiting in the office for a few hours. How could they give him a chance to speak? Not long after Nangong Quan fainted, he was discovered by his assistant and sent to the hospital. After an examination at the hospital, they found out that Nangong Quan had been poisoned, but they couldn't find the cause of the poison. Plus, the poison had already invaded his brain, so he needed some time to recover. The specific situation could only be determined through testing. The assistant was so anxious that he immediately called Su Yuran. As soon as Su Yuran heard the news, she was dumbfounded as she drove straight to the hospital. Not long after, the media somehow found out that Nangong Quan had fallen seriously ill and was in a coma. Only Elder Nangong and Su Yuran knew why Nangong Quan was in this state. As she paced back and forth outside the emergency room, Su Yuran was both anxious and angry. She never expected that someone would use such despicable methods in this day and age, especially since this person was her husband's grandfather. She had never been in the underworld, so she didn't know about the underworld. But she was certain that Elder Nangong had something to do with this. But at this time, Elder Nangong arrived at the hospital with the other higher-ups to visit Nangong Quan. Su Yuran's eyes turned red as she looked at Elder Nangong angrily. Is this your motive, grandfather? Yuran, what happened to Quan Air? What did the doctor say? He's putting on a good show, Su Yuran humphed. Shouldn't he be asking you what happened to Quan Air, grandfather? Yuran, I'm Nangong Quan's grandfather. Are you suspecting me of harming my own grandson? Didn't you? Of course not, Elder Nangong denied. He's my only grandson. Su Yuran sneered and did not say another word. After quite some time, she finally said to the old man, if revenge is the only way to make you give up and give everyone peace, then go ahead and get your revenge. Go look for the Mo family. I don't know what you want, but no matter what you want, as long as Quan Air is standing in your way, I'll agree to it. Madam, Nangong Quan's assistant immediately tried to stop her, but Su Yuran cut him off. If grandfather doesn't get what he wants, he will hurt someone else. It could be you, or it could be me. After hearing this, the assistant obediently kept his mouth shut. Grandfather, please give us a way out. Our family doesn't want revenge, and we don't want to be dragged into this mess. Take whatever you want. Nangong Quan was told to the public that he was seriously ill. But everyone knew what was actually going on. Elder Nangong naturally became the acting CEO. After all, Su Yuran had already said that she would give him whatever he wanted. Plus, as the biggest shareholder of Springfall, he naturally had to step up and take charge of Nangong Quan's illness. However, after school that day, little Eggshell did not see her father as she wished. Instead, she was taken to the hospital. Mommy, what's wrong with Daddy? Has he caught a cold? Su Yuran had always been strong, but as soon as she heard little Eggshell's question, she couldn't help but hug her and burst into tears. Mommy, what's wrong with Mommy? If only I was a little more alert. If only I was a little more careful. If only I could... Mommy, what's wrong? Little Eggshell was frightened and anxious because Su Yuran did not say a word. She simply continued to cry. After Su Yuran stopped crying, she realized that she was in front of her child. So, she wiped her tears away and said to little Eggshell, Daddy is sick and hasn't woken up yet. Little Eggshell, you need to be good, okay? Chapter 1174. What's wrong with Daddy? Little Eggshell asked curiously. She wanted to know what was wrong with Nangong Quan and what kind of poison he had been poisoned with. In the end, the doctor gave the patient the results of his examination and notified the patient's family. We examined the patient for quite some time before we found the source of the poison. The needle is in his neck, so he must have been attacked. And according to the test results of the poison in his body, this drug is called Lama powder. It is a new drug used to paralyze the nerves in the brain. Criminals often use this kind of thing to achieve their goals. Moreover, this is an improved version. Although we've tried our best to remove it, the drug still managed to invade his brain. He may end up in a coma for a long time. It's hard to say when he'll wake up, so you should be prepared. Plus, we can't rule out the possibility of other complications from his coma. After hearing from the doctor, Su Yuran clutched her chest and knelt down. For some reason, she suddenly had the urge to kill old man Nangong. But at this time, little Eggshell asked pitifully, "Mommy, will Daddy die?" Su Yuran turned to look at little Eggshell. As she looked at the pitiful little sweetheart, Su Yuran couldn't ignore her. "No, nothing will happen to Daddy. Believe in Mommy, okay?" Su Yuran's heart was in turmoil, but she had to comfort little Eggshell and take care of her. After all, she was the only person she could rely on. "Mommy, I'm scared." "Don't be scared. Mommy's here." Su Yuran hugged little Eggshell as tears rolled down her face. But there was nothing she could do. Soon, Su Yuran saw her husband in the ICU. Seeing him unconscious and lying motionless on the bed, Su Yuran burst into tears again. The news spread like wildfire, so it didn't take long for Tongning and Emoting to hear about it. However, Tongning never expected that Elder Nangong would be so ruthless as to harm his own grandson for the sake of power. Yuran must be in pain at a time like this. Tongning sighed. Plus, Nangong Quan, Elder Nangong also wanted to pierce my throat with a needle, but Hai Rui's security is too tight, so he didn't get the chance. Imo Ting replied calmly. "I want to see Yuran," Tongning said. "Don't go. She'll feel even worse if she sees you now. You should know, if it wasn't for the hatred between the Imo family and the Nangong family, Elder Nangong wouldn't have hurt his own grandson for the sake of revenge. We are also accomplices that hurt Nangong Quan, so seeing us will only make her feel worse." After hearing this, Tongning nodded her head. "I just didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. Since Elder Nangong is going to deal with his own grandson, there's no need to mention us. We still don't know what he's going to do, so we need to be more vigilant. Didn't you say you were going to stop monitoring him? What about now?" She had indeed underestimated Elder Nangong's desire for revenge. Even after such a long time, the hatred in his heart could not be erased. However, who should he blame for this matter? Even so, Tongning did not believe that Elder Mo's actions were wrong. If it were her, she would probably make the same choice. Let's see what tricks that old man has up his sleeves. After Elder Nangong snatched power from Nangong Quan's hands, the first thing he did was announce the delay of Parasite. This was his motive, even at the cost of hurting his own grandson. Although everyone in the agency complained, no one dared to express their dissatisfaction. Wasn't Nangong Quan's fate enough to wake them up? If he could make a move on his own grandson, then why would he do it to unrelated bystanders? Everyone had heard that Elder Nangong was ruthless when he was in the underworld. Now that they thought about it, it was indeed true. "I know you're not happy with my decision, but I will use my actions to prove to you that pushing back Parasite was the right decision. You should believe these words yourself." At least, everyone in the agency knew why he was doing this. The drunkard's intention wasn't the wine. That night, Su Yuran returned home with little Eggshell to pick up some clothes. But she found Elder Nangong standing at the front door, waiting for them. Su Yuran lowered her head and pretended not to see him. She originally wanted to let little Eggshell walk around, but Elder Nangong stopped her. "Just this once. I guarantee it won't happen again. I don't want to talk to you right now. Please leave," Su Yuran replied coldly. "I don't think a person that would hurt his own grandson is human. Little Eggshell is here right now, so I don't want to say anything bad. You can leave." Elder Nangong took a deep breath and left Nangong Quan's home. If you're going to be bad, then be completely bad. Don't make yourself even more annoying. Elder Nangong didn't understand how selfish he was, but those around him knew. How many people did he have to sacrifice for the sake of revenge? Especially since everyone else thought that he was being wronged. They only had themselves to blame. "Mommy, did great-grandfather hurt Daddy?" Little Eggshell asked. Although she was still young, she still understood the conversation between the two women. "That's why, from now on, you don't need to admit that you're my grandfather anymore," Su Yuran replied. "Little Eggshell, remember, the person that hurt us was your great-grandfather. Didn't Elder Nangong insist on doing things his way so that the Imo family could sing a few more songs during the screening of the Ant Queen 2? He paid such a huge price to make the Imo family suffer. He was going to betray everyone, all for the sake of revenge." This made Tongning extremely nervous. After all, She had a lot of things that she cared about in this world. If Elder Nangong decided to threaten her one by one, she might not be able to endure it. Previously, she didn't have such a deep understanding of Elder Nangong's hatred. But now, she finally understood what it meant to be willing to pay any price. Tongning wanted to go over and comfort Su Yuran, but just as Mo Ting said, Su Yuran might not be happy to see her. In fact, she might even feel worse. So, there was nothing she could do. All she could do was be cautious. Chapter 1175. In the following days, Elder Nangong suddenly stopped making any movements. After taking control of spring-fall film and television, he actually quietened down. But no one dared to let their guard down. After all, no one knew if he would suddenly go crazy again. Nangong Quan lay in the hospital for almost a week. During this time, Su Yuran broke down multiple times and even felt a little hopeless. The doctor said that Nangong Quan's brain had been poisoned and he could wake up at any time. But at the same time, he could pass away at any time. Su Yuran spent the entire week in shock, but at the same time, she was also worried. Whenever Nangong Quan made a move, she would pay extra attention. But time and time again, she fell from the clouds to the bottom of the valley. In the beginning, Su Yuran indeed vented her anger on the Mo family and hated Mo Ting and Tongning. But as time passed, she calmed down. After all, even Nangong Quan never blamed the Mo family. So what right did she have to do so? Her husband could be broad-minded, so why couldn't she be? With this thought, she felt relieved. Now, her biggest wish was for Nangong Quan to wake up. Little Eggshell visited her father every day. When she saw her father lying motionless in bed, she felt depressed. "Mommy, Little Eggshell, are you going to lose Daddy?" Every time Little Eggshell asked this question, Su Yuran's heart felt like it was being stabbed by needles. So, she held back her tears and comforted, "No, Daddy won't leave us. But Daddy's been asleep for so many days. Does he not want Kai-Er anymore? Eggshell, you're such a good girl. How could Daddy not want you? Trust Mommy, Daddy will be fine." The most hateful thing was that Elder Nangong had harmed his own grandson to this extent. Yet, he only appeared on the day of the accident. After so long, not only did he not visit, he didn't even say a word of greeting. Could a person's heart really be this bad? At times, Su Yuran really doubted human nature. Tongning asked Lu Che to secretly keep an eye on Nangong Quan's condition. When she found out that Nangong Quan showed no signs of waking up, she felt it was a pity. But apart from feeling pity, she also gave Tang Yichen a phone call and told her about Nangong Quan's condition. "What hospital is that? You can't even cure such a lousy poison?" Tang Yichen was speechless. However, Tongning understood the underlying meaning behind his words. "You mean you're confident?" "I'm not confident on my own, but with Lu Guangli around, we're more than enough." "Of course, he's also very reliable on his own," Tang Yichen replied. "Let's transfer him to another hospital." "But why are you so fixated on your enemy? Nangong Quan is innocent." Tongning's voice was a little deep. "He is an open and honest person. He is a good role model for a big brother." "All right then, find a way to transfer him to the military hospital." After speaking to Tang Yichen, Tongning explained the situation to Mo Ting. After hearing this, President Mo nodded his head. If this was Elder Nangong's doing, definitely wouldn't want Nangong Quan to wake up. So, if we want to take him away from the hospital, we will need to use some tricks. "I understand." Tongning stretched out her arms and hugged her husband. "I've never owed anyone anything. But this time, I feel like we owe Nangong Quan." Mo Ting placed his chin on the top of her head and agreed with her. Mo family owes him. We have always been one. Why do we have to separate ourselves? Don't tell me that when Elder Nangong seeks revenge, he's going to let me and the kids off the hook? Originally, these were thoughtful words. But, for some reason, when Mo Ting heard them, they sounded a little heart-wrenching. "I never thought that I would make you feel so uneasy." Don't say things like that. Whether it's good or bad, we will always be united. Tongning hugged Mo Ting tightly. Tongning hugged Mo Ting tightly. Hurry and make arrangements. I'm sure Yuran must be worried sick after so many days. For this matter, you'll need to work with Su Yuran first. Mo Ting said. Okay, I'll give her a phone call in a moment. Don't worry. The couple worked together to save Nangong Quan from the hospital. Although Su Yuran appeared to be free on the surface, no one knew how many spies Nangong Quan had planted in the hospital. So, Tongning carefully gave Su Yuran a phone call. Although, at first, Su Yuran was hesitant to pick up the phone. Forget it, Su Yuran picked up the phone. Yuran, I have a piece of good news for you. But I need your cooperation. I've already described Nangong Quan's condition to my sister. She told me that as long as Nangong Quan is transferred to the military hospital, she has a 100% chance of waking him up. Really? Su Yuran suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. But it will take some effort to transfer Nangong Quan out of the hospital. You probably don't know that Elder Nangong has spies in the hospital. As long as he can wake up, I'm willing to do anything, Su Yuran replied cautiously. You simply need to tell me what I need to do, Su Yuran replied cautiously in a low voice. Right now, Ting is still making arrangements. Our plan is to bribe Nangong Quan's doctor and pretend that Nangong Quan needs emergency surgery. After he enters the operating theater, we will disguise him as another patient and transfer him to the military hospital. After the surgery is over, we will transfer him back. If Nangong Quan wakes up, you need to temporarily put on an act to ensure his safety. Understood? I understand. I'll listen to your arrangements, Su Yuran replied. Just hold on a little longer. Su Yuran burst into tears of joy. Luckily, she didn't hang up the phone. Otherwise, was she going to miss out on the chance to save Nangong Quan? Thank you, Tongning. Thank you so much. Keep your spirits up. The two women did not speak for too long because they were afraid that they would be discovered. After Su Yuran hung up the phone, she acted normal on the surface. But, inside, she was overjoyed because her husband could finally be saved. Otherwise, she would have started complaining about how the heavens were so unfair and cruel to the kind-hearted. One day later, Tongning sent over a message saying that they would be making their move in the morning. As there were many patients scheduled for surgery in the morning, they wouldn't be suspected. Su Yuran simply needed to put on an act with the doctors. After breakfast, the nurse entered Nangong Quan's room to check on him. But when she noticed that Nangong Quan's mouth was bleeding, she immediately called the doctor. Afterwards, the doctor examined Nangong Quan and said to the nurse, "Arrange for an emergency surgery. We may need to open his brain." Su Yuran was so scared that she burst into tears. She followed Nangong Quan's bed all the way to the operating theater. Family members are not allowed in. Please wait outside. Chapter 1176. Afterwards, Su Yuran stood in front of the operating theater and began to cry in despair. To make her act believable, she didn't even check to see if Nangong Quan had been moved out. She didn't want to arouse suspicion. Perhaps because Elder Nangong knew that Nangong Quan was in the middle of an important surgery, he finally showed up at the hospital. But Su Yuran grabbed onto his shirt and shook him uncontrollably. "Are you happy now? Are you happy that my husband is about to die from the poison? Is this your so-called revenge? If you weren't Quan's grandfather, I would beat you to death right now." Afterwards, Su Yuran was pulled away by a nurse. Meanwhile, Elder Nangong never expected things to turn out this way. He didn't feel good either, but the assassin that poisoned Nangong Quan said that there were risks to using the medicine and that the worst-case scenario was death. Even so, he still used the medicine without hesitation. From this, one could see how ruthless he was towards his revenge. But his ruthlessness ended up causing him to suffer the consequences. Nangong Quan was currently being resuscitated in the operating theater. He kept telling himself that sacrifices were necessary to achieve great things. The only reason he was able to stand there calmly was because he wasn't the one being sacrificed. "You're worse than an animal. I hope you return to prison soon and die of old age there." Su Yuran's vicious curses filled his ears, but Elder Nangong couldn't hear a word. A moment after Nangong Quan entered the operating theater, he was immediately escorted out. This way, he wouldn't arouse any suspicion. After entering the military hospital, Nangong Quan was directly sent to the operating theater. Meanwhile, Lu Guangli and Tang Yichen looked at Nangong Quan's medical report as they walked to the operating theater. I can handle this surgery on my own. You don't need to follow me, Lu Guangli said. You were on duty last night. Go get some rest. Okay, but you need to make sure that the surgery is a success, Tang Yichen instructed. Let's go, Lu Guangli said without batting an eye as he headed straight into the operating theater. Although he wasn't happy with how Tang Yichen helped Tongning in the past, as time passed, he had gotten used to it. After all, he was a part of the Tang family. Furthermore, Nangong Quan's life was at stake. If Nangong Quan continued to remain unconscious, even if he woke up in the end, his brain would be damaged. Tang Yichen knew that Lu Guangli would be fine, so she headed to the waiting room to get some rest. But shortly after she laid down, Tongning followed her to the hospital to check on Nangong Quan's condition. You really know how to pick a time to come? I was just about to rest. You sleep, I'll wait outside. Aren't you afraid of the media coming? Tang Yichen led her to the waiting room. Don't worry, Lu Guangli is very familiar with this type of surgery. Don't worry. Of course, I have faith in Dr. Lu's medical skills. I'm just afraid of external factors, Tongning explained. After all, I have an extremely cruel grandfather. Speaking of this, Tang Yichen was immediately reminded of Tang Xian. He used to be a heartless person who could not wait for his family to die. In the hospital, these things have long been a common sight. Tongning did not say a word as she accompanied Tang Yichen to the waiting room. 2 hours later, when the surgery was over, Tang Yichen received a phone call from Lu Guangli. Nangong Quan will wake up in 2 hours. Make arrangements to move him, but be careful on the way back. Thank you for your hard work. You know how to make it up to him tonight, Lu Guangli said before he hung up the phone. Tang Yichen's face turned red as she said to Tongning, You can move him back now. Thank you, sis. Every time something life-threatening happens, I have to trouble you. It's worth it for a celebrity like you to thank me. Don't be silly. If you didn't look for me, who else would you look for? Tang Yichen winked at Tongning. Hurry and move it back. I still need to get some rest. I won't be able to sleep tonight. Tongning did not continue to act coy as she quickly arranged for Nangong Quan to be sent back to the hospital. Elder Nangong never expected Tongning and Su Yuran to pull off such a feat. On the way back, Nangong Quan was transferred right under his nose, but he did not notice. Afterwards, Tongning sent Su Yuran a message. The surgery was a success. He will wake up in 2 hours. Be careful. At this moment, Su Yuran finally let go of the huge rock in her heart. A moment later, the lights in the operating theater turned off and Nangong Quan's doctor stepped out. He then said to Su Yuran and the others, His life has been saved, but the chances of him waking up are even lower. After hearing this, Su Yuran once again glared at Elder Nangong with hatred. After confirming that Nangong Quan wasn't dead, Elder Nangong turned around and left the hospital. Afterwards, the doctor asked Su Yuran, Where did you move him to? Whose medical skills are so good? Lu Guangli. Do you know him? Su Yuran replied. Oh. The doctor looked like he had a sudden realization as he gave Su Yuran a thumbs up. He's a genius doctor, but it's hard to get him to operate on a scalpel. I can't believe you guys managed to get him to do it. That's impressive. She wasn't the impressive one. Tongning was the impressive one. That doctor, my husband, just like Dr. Lu said, he will definitely wake up in 2 hours. Just wait. After hearing this, Su Yuran finally relaxed. For your safety, I've arranged a new room for you guys. You won't be monitored and eavesdropped on. Thank you, doctor. You're welcome. After speaking, the doctor left the operating theater. Someone else would take care of the rest. As a result, Su Yuran became even more cautious. If Elder Nangong found out that Nangong Quan had been cured, he might give him another shot. Su Yuran didn't want to take this risk. Now that Nangong Quan had woken up, she wasn't going to let him go easy on Elder Nangong again. He was a ticking time bomb. If he was allowed to do whatever he wanted, there would only be more people who would be injured. Over the next 2 hours, Su Yuran learned what it meant to be anxious. especially when she saw Nangong Quan lying motionless in bed. She couldn't help but worry at this time. Nangong Quan suddenly called out in a raspy voice, "Yuran." Su Yuran turned around. As soon as she saw Nangong Quan open his eyes, she pounced over in joy. Tongning didn't lie. "You're really awake. You're finally awake." Chapter 1177. I think I slept for a long time. Nangong Quan said in a weak voice. "Did you know 8 whole days? I almost thought you didn't want me and little eggshell anymore." Su Yuran cried as she lay on Nangong Quan's chest. "Do you know how hard it was for me to survive the past 8 days?" Nangong Quan had just woken up, so he naturally couldn't remember anything. But he could feel how scared Su Yuran had been over the past few days. I'm sorry for making you sad." Su Yuran sat up with tears on her face and gently stroked Nangong Quan's cheek. "Without you, what would little eggshell and I do? Promise me you won't scare us like this again, okay?" Nangong Quan wanted to reach out his hand and wipe away Su Yuran's tears, but he couldn't move. The couple continued to hug each other in silence. After a while, the doctor finally knocked on the door. "Mr. Nangong is awake." Su Yuran stood up and wiped away her tears as she nodded her head. "Yes, doctor. Hurry and check if there are any side effects." "Don't worry. Dr. Lu's surgery was perfect. There won't be any side effects," the doctor replied. The attending doctor replied, "Also, I've already asked someone to investigate a few suspicious informants for you from the surveillance cameras. From now on, you just need to avoid them." "Thank you, doctor. If you want to thank someone, thank President Mo for his arrangements." After saying this, the doctor left the room and closed the door behind him. At this time, Su Yuran returned to Nangong Quan's side and asked, "Do you still remember what happened before you fainted?" Nangong Quan thought for a moment and shook his head. "I was attacked from behind. I didn't see who it was." "I'm sure you know who it was that wanted to harm you. After you fell unconscious, Grandfather immediately took control of Springfall, and I even heard that he delayed the release of Parasite. But that's not important right now. The most important thing is for you to recover. Do you know who saved you this time? It's the Mo family." Su Yuran said as she held on to Nangong Quan's hand. "The Mo family are very concerned about your situation. It was all thanks to their help that you were saved." "Really, Quan? Tongning wants you to continue pretending to be unconscious to ensure your safety. What do you think?" Nangong Quan thought for a moment before he replied to Su Yuran. "Call my assistant over. I want to hold a board meeting. But this way, Grandpa will know that you have woken up. Don't be afraid. Just do as I say." Nangong Quan instructed. Since Elder Nangong was willing to use such a sinister method, what other methods did he have to resort to? Su Yuran gently placed a kiss on the back of Nangong Quan's hand and nodded her head. "I understand. I'll immediately make arrangements." So, Su Yuran took the opportunity to tell Tongning and Mo Ting that Nangong Quan had woken up. Her gratitude was obvious, but most importantly, she couldn't let Tongning and Mo Ting's efforts go to waste. The couple had saved her husband. She would remember this kindness for the rest of her life. After Tongning found out, she felt a weight lifted off her shoulders. She knew, with this, the guilt she felt towards Mo Ting would lessen and lessen. But, most importantly, Elder Nangong's plan did not succeed. Now that Nangong Quan has woken up, what do you think he will do? Tongning asked her husband. Mo Ting put down the documents in his hands and looked at Tongning. Nangong Quan won't pretend to be unconscious to avoid trouble. He has his own way of dealing with things. Let's just wait and see. Tongning nodded her head. I just hope Elder Nangong won't be too harsh on him. He won't, because he won't get the chance to do so again. Being tricked once was already hard to defend against. But if he was tricked again, he would be truly stupid. Nangong Quan was a meticulous person, so there was no way he would be stupid. Spring Fall Film and Television. Elder Nangong was suddenly notified that he was holding an emergency board meeting. Yet, as the CEO, he only found out about it now. Soon, the shareholders and higher-ups all arrived in the meeting room. Elder Nangong looked at them questioningly. Congratulations, Elder Nangong. Your grandson has finally woken up. Elder Nangong's expression changed. As soon as he lifted his head, he saw Su Yuran slowly pushing Nangong Quan towards him. Grandfather, when did you wake up? Elder Nangong asked. Why didn't you rest more in the hospital? If I rest any more, I'm afraid the company will soon no longer be mine, Nangong Quan laughed. I've called everyone here today because I have something to ask for your opinions on. Grandfather, why don't you listen first? Elder Nangong sneered as he followed Nangong Quan into the meeting room. Everyone sat down in their chairs. I'm sure everyone knows that I was attacked a few days ago. It wasn't easy for me to wake up, and it was a close shave. As for who the culprit is, the police can't find it, so I won't continue to pursue the matter. I've called everyone here today to discuss a few things. Firstly, I would like to ask Grandfather, why did you delay Parasite? As long as you tell me the truth, I promise I won't interfere with Parasite anymore. I'll give you a chance. Elder Nangong lifted his head and looked at Nangong Quan thoughtfully. He was also trying to figure out what Nangong Quan was thinking. You don't need to test me. After all, this is the result of so many people's hard work. We can't possibly trust you unconditionally. You need to give us a convincing reason. As long as you give us a reason, no matter what it is, I can guarantee that no one will know about it. You can continue with your plan, and I won't interfere. I can tell you everything, but you need to sign a confidentiality agreement, Elder Nangong replied. I can't afford to take the risk. Nangong Quan took a deep breath and nodded his head. As you say. Afterwards, Nangong Quan instructed his lawyer to deliver a confidentiality agreement to the shareholders and asked them to sign it. After everyone signed the agreement, Elder Nangong finally revealed the plan he was preparing. He was going to collaborate with the Americans to plagiarize the script of the Ant Queen 2 and release the film in the U.S. before Hyrule. This was the reason why he insisted on releasing Parasite last. If Tongming was caught up in a plagiarism scandal, who would benefit from it? It would definitely be their sincere film, Parasite. After hearing the entire plan, Nangong Quan couldn't help but sneer. You're indeed ruthless. You said it yourself. As long as I say it, you won't interfere. Yes, I personally promised you, and I have no intention of going back on my word. Since you're willing to poison your own grandson, what reason do I have to stop you from getting your revenge? Chapter 1178. But, Grandfather, even if you set up such a perfect trap and did everything you could to ruin the results of the Ant Queen 2, do you believe that in the end, you still won't be able to beat Mo Ting and Tongning? In the end, you still won't be able to beat Mo Ting and Tongning because they are both very talented people. As long as you don't leak the news, it's fine. Dear shareholders, just wait for the big sales. Elder Nangong said casually. Not everyone was like Nangong Quan, who relied on his own ability to win. After all, shareholders only cared about money. As long as there was money to be made, not only would he keep it a secret, he would even cooperate with them to put on a show. Okay, we've agreed on the first condition. So, let's agree on the second condition. If you hurt someone again, what will we say? I won't call the police, but that doesn't mean I don't have any clues. Grandfather, if I tell the police to investigate, you won't be able to escape. If you hurt someone again, I will personally send you back to prison. Nangong Quan swore. Okay, Elder Nangong nodded. Thirdly, if you don't succeed, you can directly withdraw from Springfall. After all, there's so many people who need to support their families. No one wants to be crazy with you. Okay, after making this promise, Nangong Quan was so weak that he was covered in sweat. Su Yuran noticed something was wrong with him, so she quickly asked, should we return to the hospital now? Okay, Nangong Quan nodded his head. Nangong Quan nodded his head before he looked at Elder Nangong. Since we've come to an agreement, can the people at the hospital leave now? Elder Nangong shrugged his shoulders. He had no reason to reject. Elder Nangong never expected that Nangong Quan would actually agree to his crazy decision and stop interfering with him. From the looks of it, he was extremely confident in the Mo family. Quan, are you really planning to hide this from the Mo family? Are you really not going to tell President Mo and Tongning about something this big? After all, they're only... Nangong Quan held onto the back of Su Yuran's hand, gesturing for her to stop talking. Tongning and Mo Ting have been through a lot. In the past, when they were in trouble, they didn't know about it beforehand. So, don't worry, no matter what the old man does, no matter how vicious his methods are, he still won't be able to suppress them. You trust them that much. I trust you, Nangong Quan replied confidently. Just wait and see. If I don't give grandfather a chance, if I continue to compete with him, he will continue to do the same thing and hurt more people. Rather than letting that happen, I might as well let him do what he wants to do. I'm sure Mo Ting and Tongning will make sure he gets what he deserves. Although she felt a little sorry for the Mo couple, what Nangong Quan said was the truth. No matter how the others tried to stop him, this stubborn old man would definitely try to hurt the Mo family, even if he had to use the last of his strength. Instead of that, why not put the matter on the table? This way, it would prevent the old man from playing any other tricks. Just like that, Nangong Quan returned to the hospital and prepared to receive treatment. After all, Elder Nangong still had a few more months to recover. So, he decided to take this opportunity to recover and secretly investigate the killer that injured him. Back then, the killer had indeed attacked him from behind. But Nangong Quan's computer screen showed the killer's face. Although he couldn't describe it in detail, if he saw it again, he would definitely be able to point it out. That night, little Eggshell returned home from school. As soon as she saw Nangong Quan awake, she was extremely excited. "Daddy, you're finally awake. I thought you didn't want me anymore. How could Daddy bear to abandon you?" "Abandon your mommy?" Nangong Quan stretched out his arms and pulled the mother and daughter into his embrace. "For the sake of the two of you, even if I die, I will definitely come back to life. Then you'll become a zombie," little Eggshell replied innocently. Su Yuran was amused by little Eggshell's words. After so many days of gloominess, the sky was finally clear. As expected, Nangong Quan did not tell Mo Ting about Elder Nangong's scheme because he kept his promise. This gave Elder Nangong a chance to get his revenge and let him realize that the Mo family weren't as easy to deal with as he thought, as long as Elder Nangong didn't hurt anyone again. Over at Hai Rue, Mo Ting asked Lu Che to find out how Nangong Quan dealt with the situation, but Lu Che did not receive any useful information. On the same afternoon that Nangong Quan woke up, he immediately returned to the agency and held a shareholders meeting. But the strange thing was he did not punish Elder Nangong. Instead, he allowed him to continue as acting CEO. Nangong Quan fell for it once, so he naturally knows that if he goes against Elder Nangong, he will only suffer. So, he's learned his lesson. That's not surprising. "Yes, President," Lu Che nodded in agreement. "I never expected Nangong Quan to be able to control Elder Nangong. After all, how could a person with a bottom line win over a heartless person? In that case, continue to monitor him. As long as Elder Nangong doesn't do anything drastic, ignore him," Mo Ting instructed. Mo Ting instructed. Just like Tongning said, just because of this old man's appearance, no one would be able to live their lives any longer. They had to monitor him, but they also had to let the jerk know that he wasn't as important to Hai Rue as he thought he was. Meanwhile, Mo Ting's scenes for the Ant Queen 2 were always focused on filming. The closer they got to the end of filming, the more tired he became because there were a lot of fight scenes. Like Tongning, he always did his scenes personally. He wanted his character to be complete, so he never used a stunt double. Right now, no matter how many tricks Elder Nangong had up his sleeves, he couldn't afford to slow down the progress of the Ant Queen 2. As Hai Rue's main project for next year, Mo Ting and Tongning both invested 100% of their energy into the film. Of course, Elder Nangong did not reveal everything at the shareholders meeting. At least, he did not mention anything about using the Mo family's children. After all, he couldn't bring this up to the table. But he was going to do it. Otherwise, what was the point of making Hai Rue lose? His main target was the Mo family's 2 children. The Mo family had sent him to prison for so many years. How hopeless was his life? How could he possibly make the Mo family lose a little money and treat it as repayment for their debt? The children were the Mo family's hope. Only by destroying their hope Would he truly be able to vent his anger? Compared to his ruthless methods, he had spent over 20 years in prison. If he wasn't determined to get his revenge, he wouldn't have survived until now. So, he was going to make the MO family pay him back tenfold. Chapter 1179. On the day that the Ant Queen 2 finished filming, not only were the crew celebrating, but there was also one other person that was extremely excited. This person was Elder Nangong. He was one step closer to fulfilling his plan. Parasite was supposed to be released a long time ago, but Elder Nangong had been suppressing it for a long time. So, all of their previous promotions went to waste because Springfall failed to capitalize on the popularity of the film. Now, the post-production company managed to snatch the opportunity away from them. The popularity of the Ant Queen made everyone in the industry aware of the empty market for sci-fi films. Everyone wanted to enter this empty market and get a piece of the pie. So, in the next 2 to 3 years, sci-fi films are going to rise again. Springfall staff were unhappy with Elder Nangong. After all, they had invested so much effort into the film and even poached Tongning's post-production team with Hua Dali. But now, no matter how good the production was, it was useless. Every 2 to 3 days, the staff gathered together to complain and express their anger. Among them, the person that listened the most was Bai Jun. As the director of Parasite, although he wasn't as angry as everyone else, he still felt it was a pity. After all, Parasite was supposed to be the best film to compete with the Ant Queen. Yet, it was now being used by Elder Nangong as a tool for revenge. As for Bai Jun, he had started out as an art film director and was about to make a name for himself. But why didn't he have a way out? Was he still going to slit his wrist and commit suicide? Thinking about his old self, Bai Jun was amused. But, for some reason, he felt that living was more interesting. At least, he had agreed to film this film and paid off all his debts. He was now debt-free. Afterwards, he packed his things and went to look for someone. Tongning was surprised that Bai Jun had returned to her side. Back then, she had tried so hard to invite him, but he had refused. So, she even asked Xiao Man to help her. "What? You don't welcome me?" "I'm just surprised." Tongning naturally welcomed him back. "I thought you didn't care about my team. No one in Beijing would dare to look down on your team." Bai Jun laughed. "I don't need a lot of money. As long as you can feed me and keep me warm, I'll be satisfied. If you're not here for fame and fortune, why did you come?" Tongning felt that Bai Jun was a strange person. Unexpectedly, Bai Jun shrugged his shoulders and replied, "Who knows? Perhaps it's the warmth of your team that makes people want to continue living." Tongning didn't understand how much Bai Jun needed to survive, but she agreed to let him stay and temporarily act as Xiao Man's assistant. Bai Jun didn't put on airs just because he was a veteran, and Xiao Man didn't express her dissatisfaction with Bai Jun just because he used to be on the enemy's side. Xiao Man knew very well that there were no boundaries in artistic communication. Besides, she knew very well that Bai Jun was a very talented man. After filming for the Ant Queen ended, post-production also sped up. As a non-professional production team, the youngsters from Starshine were obsessed with their new field of expertise. In fact, they were so obsessed with it that it was impossible to imagine. Soon, the first trailer for The Ant Queen 2 was released. Hirue did not hold back as they teamed up with all the major theaters in the country to release a 30-second commercial for The Ant Queen 2. Film fans did not get to see the legendary Parasite. Instead, they got to see the trailer for The Ant Queen 2. This time, as the antagonist, Mo Ting revealed a ruthless side in the trailer. But it was especially thrilling. Not only was the feeling of a giant termite scary enough, but there was also the addition of a powerful antagonist like Mo Ting. Just like that, the battle between the good and the antagonist, the battle between the good and the monster, and the antagonist and the monster, all three storylines played out side by side. It was extremely exciting. In just 30 seconds, film fans were already screaming that it was so exciting that their hearts couldn't take it. Fans even started leaving comments on Hirue's official Weibo. "I'm really looking forward to it. The Ant Queen 2 foot is obviously more exciting than the first and has a better story." I really like the way Tongning and her team created the Ant Queen. It doesn't focus on love. I hate watching exciting films like this, especially when they include a hero saving the damsel in distress. I need to cheer for Tongning and President Mo, especially President Mo. He was so handsome that it was a complete mess. I can't believe he's playing the antagonist this time. He's so handsome. All of a sudden, Beijing was filled with a sci-fi craze. Perhaps the only people that could create such a scene were the Tongning couple. Meanwhile, Superstar Media, led by Lin Xian, also released some good news. Qin Shui, the old singer that Lin Xian had personally rescued, had returned to the stage in Vienna after a fierce battle with her old employer. At her lowest, Qin Shui relied on scavenging to make a living. This was one of the biggest highlights of the entertainment industry. This old woman that had lived for half a century was actually able to return to the music industry after so many years. In fact, she even returned to the place that she always dreamed of. Rumors began to spread within the industry that Lin Xian had received Tongning's teachings and was now able to support Superstar Media. Afterwards, plenty of artists that wanted to make a comeback approached Lin Xian. Superstar Media seemed to have returned to the days when Tongning was still around. Lin Xian's desk was filled with offers from artists. So, at Hai Rui's New Year celebration dinner, Tongning suggested to Mo Ting, I hope you can assign a few more professional people to help Lin Xian. At least, she won't have to worry when she's scouting for artists. Lin Xian has already notified me, but Hai Rui has no intention of getting involved with Superstar Media's management. Lin Xian has her own plans. I never thought that she'd be faster than me. Tongning laughed as she helped her children arrange their clothes. After hearing this, Mo Ting pulled Tongning over and placed her on his lap. The Ant Queen 2 will be released early next year. Why are you in such a rush? Have you forgotten? Elder Nangong has already seen our script. No matter what he plans to do, it's best if we release it earlier. How about this? If we want to catch Elder Nangong off guard, we can pick a festival and release it without any promotions. Are you that confident? Mo Ting asked as he hugged Tongning. You should know that if we don't do any promotions, the film will fail. I have confidence in the film, and I have confidence in the fans. Most importantly, I have confidence in the market. If a film isn't good, no amount of promotions will matter. But for a good film, word of mouth is the best form of promotion. Chapter 1180. After hearing this, Mo Ting pinched Tongning's nose. You sure have a lot of guts. There's nothing I don't dare to think about, because that's what I want you to do. Elder Nangong did indeed read a portion of the script and left. But who knows if he has any evil intentions towards it. Luce has also found out that Elder Nangong has been in contact with companies in the U.S. This is the only way for us to ensure the safety of the script. Previously, the script for Stupid had been leaked. At that time, they decided to publish a book to ensure that Stupid didn't have any copyright issues. But this time, the situation was different. So, publishing a book wasn't the best option. What do you think? President Mo, do you dare to make a bet with me? Mo Ting smiled as he looked at Tongning. If this was in the past, Tongning's suggestion would have been a fantasy and would have been impossible to pass. But now, Hai Rui's board of directors were extremely lenient towards Tongning because of her capabilities. In fact, the shareholders doted on Tongning more than her husband did. As long as it was Tongning's suggestion, the higher-ups would consider it seriously. In fact, some shareholders even told Mo Ting not to be too harsh on her. Since that's the case, let's get the agency to come up with a feasible plan tomorrow. We need to ensure that after the film is released, we can use the following promotions. Tongning nodded her head as a smile appeared on her face. She really enjoyed President Mo's trust. The next day, Mo Ting brought up Tongning's suggestion in a meeting. The reason was that the script had been leaked. In order to prevent Elder Nangong from falling into a trap, Tongning decided to play her cards differently. But of course, this was a huge risk. Even though everyone had a lot of confidence in the quality of the film, releasing it without any promotions was unheard of. Of course, those films that didn't have the means to release it were excluded. After all, The Ant Queen was going to be one of Hai Rui's most important projects next year. So, Everyone was under a lot of pressure. But Mo Ting asked Lu Che to show the higher-ups some data. The data from the past 2 years shows that all of Tong Ning's works have the highest number of views. It's not only the Ant Queen one, even the earliest work, Stupid, has a shocking amount of views on all the major websites. It's constantly on the top searches. What does this mean? Everyone has already gotten used to treating Tong Ning's works as classics. In other words, they have acknowledged the quality of her work. So, even though Tong Ning hasn't released a new work, they continue to flip through her old works. What is this? This is publicity. This is more useful than any publicity. I've already decided that the Ant Queen 2 will be released on the same day as the Ant Queen 1. Hyrule will hold a commemorative event to commemorate the Ant Queen and give the audience a big present by releasing the Ant Queen 2 in the early hours of the morning. That way, the new and the old will stick together and it will be a great promotion. What do you think? When it came to works, they didn't have as much say as Tong Ning. When it came to publicity and PR, they had no say in front of Mo Ting. Since President Mo has already made up his mind, then let's do it this way. If we want the film to be popular, we need to change the way we promote it. That way, the industry will be more active, someone agreed. We don't have any objections either. The higher-ups also agreed. Besides, I think this is quite interesting. It's the same as the Ant Queen 1 becoming popular again. The audience will be pleasantly surprised, and the major broadcasting sites will benefit from it. Everyone will be a winner. Since that's the case, then let's do it this way. When the time comes, we will definitely catch our peers off guard. Hyrule staff were also looking forward to this publicity method. Plus, without the usual publicity, the Ant Queen 2 would be a huge challenge to everyone's abilities. If the film's quality was too bad, there was no way they could survive. But everyone still trusted in Mo Ting. After all, as the decision-maker, he had never made a wrong decision. Elder Nangong never expected Tong Ning and Mo Ting to do something like this. He simply thought the couple would follow the usual routine. He paid close attention to Hyrue's every move because he wanted the Americans to be one step ahead of Hyrule, but not by too much. Not only did they want to ride on the popularity of the Ant Queen, but they also wanted the Ant Queen 2 to be sued by Hollywood. So he waited. He waited for Mo Ting to make an official announcement. He waited for Mo Ting to confirm the release date. But there was no point in waiting. After all, Hyrule had no intention of announcing the release date. They sure can keep their composure. Why couldn't they keep their composure? That in itself was a very strange question. The Ant Queen 1 foot was scheduled to be released on December 16th. So, the Ant Queen 2 was scheduled to be released on its second anniversary. Meanwhile, a rumor started to spread within the industry. Rumor had it that Han Yufan had returned to the entertainment industry after a few years and was planning to rebuild Tianyi Entertainment. If this wasn't related to Tong Ning, Han Yufan wouldn't have attracted so much attention. But regardless, Tianyi Entertainment was a long time ago for Tong Ning. It was so long ago that she couldn't even remember the details anymore. After all, the difference between her and Han Yufan's status was like heaven and earth. Hyrule could destroy a small agency at any time. But Mo Ting didn't see Han Yufan as an enemy. Because on the night that she received the news, Tong Ning said one thing to him. President Mo, you don't need to worry about it. In my heart, Han Yufan doesn't even have the right to be mentioned in the same breath as you. Mo Ting was extremely pleased with Tong Ning's words. Over at the Nangong family home, after Nangong Quan was discharged from the hospital, he began to work elsewhere. Since he said he was going to hand over Parasite, he wasn't going to go back on his word. So, he shifted his focus and tried his best to recover everyone's losses. Of course, his relationship with Elder Nangong was not going to change for the better. After all, Elder Nangong was a relative that had once tried to poison him. No matter how magnanimous he would still be traumatized. After experiencing a life and death situation, the way Nangong Quan protected his wife and daughter changed a lot. At least, when it came to Elder Nangong, he no longer blindly backed down. However, even though they knew what Elder Nangong was planning to do to the Mo family, they couldn't tell him. This made Su Yuran and Nangong Quan feel extremely guilty towards Tongning and Nangong Quan. The Mo family were the ones that saved Nangong Quan. Plus, being in the entertainment industry, Nangong Quan was bound to see Mo Ting at all sorts of events. But at times like these, the two of them simply brushed past each other. Chapter 1181. Old Master Nangong, who had always been stubborn, didn't feel good about this matter. However, everything he had done had indeed been done for the sake of revenge. Now, whenever little Eggshell saw the old man, she would hide in her room in fear. Perhaps it was because the incident last time left a huge shadow in little Eggshell's heart. Plus, she more or less understood why her father almost died, so whenever she saw the old man, she would hide as much as she could. Elder Nangong assumed that he would be lonely for the rest of his life, so he did not make too many requests of little Eggshell and Su Yuran. After all, he simply wanted to give them an explanation for what happened in the past. He never expected to have children and grandchildren around him. He staked everything on one throw just to get an explanation for the 20 years he spent in prison. Was he hateful? There was no doubt about it. So was he pitiful? When she thought about it, he was indeed pitiful. Su Yuran often felt bad for him, but she couldn't get close to him to care about him. She was afraid that if she got close to him, she would simply be used. That night, after Su Yuran had a shower, she entered the study room to find Nangong Quan looking through photos of his parents. If it wasn't for these photos, he would have forgotten what his parents looked like a long time ago. Will grandfather really be happy after he gets his revenge? Even if he succeeds and injures the Mo family, will he really be happy? He no longer cares about whether he'll be happy or not. He only lives for one reason: to make the Mo family suffer. He can't stop, otherwise he'll lose the motivation to continue living, Nangong Quan replied as he wrapped his arm around Su Yuran. Su Yuran's heart ached for Nangong Quan. Even though Elder Nangong almost caused him to be paralyzed, he did not hate anyone. In fact, he even gave Elder Nangong a chance to get his revenge. This man looked tall and dangerous, but his heart was truly kind. Can you tell me all the pain in your heart? Seeing you like this makes my heart ache. Nangong Quan rubbed the back of Su Yuran's waist and smiled. Shouldn't all men be this magnanimous? No, of course not. At least, Mo Ting wouldn't have suffered like this. Tongning wouldn't have let him suffer like this. They were all people who treated him very well. That's enough. Everyone has their own beliefs in life. Let's take your favorite Tongning as an example. She firmly sticks to her beliefs. If people don't offend her, she won't offend them. My belief is not to blame anyone and always maintain a kind heart. After hearing Nangong Quan's words, Su Yuran suddenly laughed. You're wrong. The person I like the most isn't Tongning, it's you. Also, if anyone bullies you in the future, I can help you beat them up. Don't forget, I'm a retired soldier. Silly. Nangong Quan lowered his head and kissed Su Yuran. The couple then fell asleep in each other's arms. Because of Nangong Quan's generosity, Tongning had always approved of him. This was also the reason why she was willing to help Nangong Quan and Su Yuran. However, the relationship between the two families was really strange. At first, there was only hatred, but now there was the grace of saving his life. Little Eggshell's ill-fated relationship with the two brothers didn't even count. Of course, Elder Nangong continued to be lonely, especially when he was waiting for Hai Rui's announcement for the Ant Queen 2 to be released. He spent most of his time shuttling back and forth between the US and Beijing, even though, in the end, he didn't get what he wanted. Over a year had passed, but Hai Rui still hadn't released the Ant Queen 2, and there was no news of it. Tongning focused on the post-production of the Ant Queen 2. Her goal was to make the Ant Queen 2 more exquisite than the models created by Glory. But as the anniversary of the Ant Queen 1 approached, Hai Rui did not do any promotions for it. Instead, they decided to hold a commemorative event for the Ant Queen 2. In fact, they planned to advertise it extensively. Although there was no news of the Ant Queen 2, the commemorative event for the Ant Queen 1 had a lot of rewards. Since it was close to Christmas, fans were still very interested in the event. Above all, Hai Rui also announced that they would be releasing a big surprise on the morning of the 16th. Everyone paid full attention to the commemorative event, but no one expected that it would be related to the Ant Queen 2. As Elder Nangong watched Hai Rui holding a commemorative event for an outdated film, he sneered, "If you're so capable, why don't you release a date for the Ant Queen 2? The Americans were already prepared, but Hai Rui had yet to make a move. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Elder Nangong originally planned to make a move on the Mo family's 2 children during Christmas. But it seemed it would no longer happen. At this time of the year, Beijing was at its coldest. But the cinemas were filled with excitement. This was because Hai Rui was already holding a commemorative event for the Ant Queen 1. So, the cinemas were giving out a large number of tickets to receive a big surprise on the night of the 16th. What's the surprise? Have you received a ticket from Hai Rui yet? I'm not sure, but it looks interesting. I never thought that Hai Rui would hold such a big commemorative event for the Ant Queen 1. They're really thoughtful. But I'm more interested in when the Ant Queen 2 will be released. Who cares? Anyway, the 16th is Sunday. We can go and see what the surprise is. Including us, the audience was very interested in Hai Rui's commemorative event. So, they all decided to receive a ticket on the night of the 16th to receive their surprise. Perhaps, no one expected that the surprise they received was to watch the premiere of the Ant Queen 2 at the cinema. Of course, the mystery movie tickets weren't limitless. In fact, each theater only had a limited number of tickets. This was just a gimmick arranged by Hai Rui. But if everything went as expected, the mystery movie tickets would definitely work. It was the eve of the premiere, but Tongning was starting to feel nervous. In reality, she wasn't as carefree as she made herself out to be. Are you only starting to worry now? Mo Ting laughed as he looked at her reaction. Shouldn't you be worried about this a long time ago? I know there won't be a problem. I'm just used to being nervous, Tongning complained. But rather than saying she was nervous, it was more accurate to say that she was looking forward to the fans' reactions. Chapter 1182. On the 16th, tickets for The Ant Queen were released to the public. Although it wasn't hard to find tickets in the trash, there were still more fans that were interested in attending the event. Soon, a long queue formed outside the theater. Everyone had come to the same conclusion. They truly loved the Ant Queen from the bottom of their hearts. The media gathered outside the theater to interview film fans about their thoughts on Hai Rui's event, and a lot of people expressed their opinions. It's such a cold day, so I don't really want to go out. But the cinema is quite lively. Plus, the event that Hai Rui is planning for the Ant Queen is very interesting. I'm actually looking forward to the mysterious gift that I have in my hands. A bespectacled young man said shyly. This is the perfect place for a date. The theater is also warm. That's right, I'm a fan of Tongning. Let's treat this event as a show of support for her. I hope the Ant Queen 2 can be released soon, another couple said. I'm a fan of Tongning's, so I had to come today. All of our fans are here. After saying this, the dozens of girls behind the little girl all raised their hands. The reporters could sense the passion in the theater, so they naturally had their own thoughts on the mysterious gift. I'm a little envious as I look at the long queue. Plus, the theater's gift this time is quite creative. Regardless, the most popular event this winter is definitely Hai Rui's commemorative event. I hope Hai Rui can continue to innovate and make everyone feel warm and happy. The camera stopped here and did not continue. If Tongning wanted to see the audience's reaction, she would have to personally go to the theater to see what was going on. At this time, the people that had just arrived at the theater quickly found their seats. Were they here to watch a commemorative film? If it's a commemorative film, I think I'm not going to watch it. I don't think it's that simple. If it's a commemorative film, Hai Rui could have just released it to the public. They wouldn't have to be so secretive. That's right. Let's wait a little longer. What if we miss out on the surprise? Very quickly, the special seats were filled with the audience. Everyone had a dumbfounded look on their faces. Then, the lights in the theater went out. After the advertisement for everyone to be quiet, a giant termite appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this, everyone assumed that Hai Rui had invited them to watch the Ant Queen one. Some of the audience even wanted to leave because they had already watched it countless times. However, when the name of the movie was displayed on the big screen, everyone screamed, "Wow, look, it's two, not one. Oh my God, is it really two? Really? Or is it just a trailer?" The audience in the cinema were all surprised and asked each other, "Is this true? My God, I wasn't prepared at all." Seeing that no one was able to calm down, the projectionist in charge of the screening immediately stopped the film and stepped out to explain, "Welcome, everyone. You're not mistaken. The film you're watching right now is Tongning's latest film, The Ant Queen 2. As you've all received a mysterious ticket, you're lucky enough to be invited to the first screening of the film. I hope everyone will remain calm and enjoy the film." "Wait, Miss Projectionist, let me calm down. I can't believe this." In the middle of the audience, a young man that loved sci-fi felt like he had hit the jackpot and needed some time to calm down. "Okay, sir. The film will resume in 2 minutes. It's a 2, not a 1. I'm so excited. I'm going to post it on my WeChat moments." Me too. Oh my God. Hi-Ray sure knows how to create surprises. This is a super jackpot. So, we're the first batch of people to watch this film, right? We're so lucky. The fans expressed their excitement one after another. 2 minutes later, they expressed their own feelings. 2 minutes later, the film officially started. Everyone tried their best to calm down and immerse themselves in the film. After all, it was hard to watch a good sci-fi film. Afterwards, film fans' WeChat moments exploded with comments of disbelief on a cold winter's night. "Are you guys watching The Ant Queen too? Impossible. How is that possible? You're all acting cool. Of course you're watching one. There's no news about 2 at all." Some of his friends fought bitterly over the film until he posted a photo of the film online. Only then did he gain the trust of his friends. Afterwards, the young man immediately went to check the movie app and discovered that The Ant Queen 2 had quietly gone online. It was actually screening. "Fuck, I'm not going to sleep. I want to go watch the film, but I can't get tickets. Hi, Rue, help me. Do you have a book ticket for tomorrow? I'll hurry and book the first screening tomorrow." While Elder Nangong had no idea what was going on, The Ant Queen 2 began screening. To highlight the importance of the event and to show how valuable the fans that had previously received the Ant Queen tickets, Hai Rue told the cinemas that they wouldn't be selling tickets that night. Instead, they would only be able to book tickets for the next day. Meanwhile, many of the fans that had thrown their tickets away found out that they were for the Ant Queen 2. As a result, the Ant Queen 2 actually ran back to the road and rummaged through the rubbish bins. In fact, this was happening all over Beijing. Even the cleaners were surprised by this. Why were the well-dressed young ladies and young masters rummaging through the rubbish bins? All these doubts were because Hai Rue's event was actually more effective than the usual promotions. After all, the first batch of people that were watching the film were currently showing off and promoting it like crazy. But the fans that didn't have the Ant Queen 2's tickets could only be envious. As a result, all the cinemas in the country were laughing like crazy. In one night, the advance tickets for the Ant Queen 2 had exploded. No agency could work with Hai Rue better than Tongning. After all, every time Tongning's film was screened, they made a ton of money. That way, even if the weather was cold and they had to stay up late, the staff at the cinemas would be able to keep their spirits up. So, was the Ant Queen 2 going to be popular? Was there a need to ask? No one expected Tongning and Mo Ting to do something like this. So, the next day, while everyone was talking about the Ant Queen 2, Elder Nangong was still in a daze. Chapter 1183. The assistant nervously placed the news on Elder Nangong's desk. "What's this all about?" Elder Nangong asked after reading through the news. Yesterday, Hai Rue held a commemorative event for the Ant Queen and teamed up with all the major cinema chains to come up with a mysterious plan. In the end, the Ant Queen 2 took the opportunity to screen. No one expected the Ant Queen 2 to screen like that. Everyone thinks that Hai Rue's plan is very interesting and successful. I heard that the Ant Queen 2 has already exceeded a few $100 million in the box office. The assistant looked at Elder Nangong from the corner of his eye as he explained, I heard that it's so popular that it's hard to get a ticket. After hearing from his assistant, Elder Nangong stood up and headed straight for Nangong Kwan's office. Nangong Kwan, you went back on your word. Nangong Kwan was in the middle of meeting with the newcomers. Although he expected that Elder Nangong would come looking for him, he never expected it to be so early. You guys can leave first. After the artist left, Nangong Kwan and Elder Nangong were the only ones left in the office. Elder Nangong's eyes were filled with anger, like he wanted to rip his grandson to shreds. If I told you that I didn't tell the Mo family anything, you wouldn't believe me, would you? Nangong Kwan laughed. But grandfather, this is the truth. I didn't reveal anything to the Mo family. Besides, I've already said that even if Mo Ting doesn't know anything, there's nothing you can do to him. Did you think that I would still believe you? However, Elder Nangong refused to believe that Mo Ting and Tongning had always been on guard. So, he was more willing to believe that Nangong Kwan had leaked the information and that Nangong Kwan and the others had teamed up to trick him. It's up to you whether you want to believe me or not. If I wanted to tell them, Hairue wouldn't have waited until now to make a move. Since you broke your promise first, don't blame me for breaking my promise. If something happens, you will have to bear the consequences. After speaking, Elder Nangong left Nangong Kwan's office, leaving Nangong Kwan looking helpless. He never expected that Mo Ting and Tongning would release the Ant Queen 2 without a trace. But what could he do? Elder Nangong refused to believe it, but this was because of Tongning and Mo Ting's sharp senses. He had no choice but to admit defeat. After leaving Nangong Kwan's office, Elder Nangong immediately made a phone call to the U.S. No matter what, the film had to be released in the U.S. by the end of the month. Otherwise, there would be nothing to hold them back, and his Christmas plans wouldn't go as smoothly. This couple is really cunning. Even so, his grandson still risked his life to tip off Mo Ting and Tongning. He simply didn't believe that Mo Ting and Tongning were that smart. The Ant Queen 2 was a huge hit not only because of the surprise event last night, but also because fans had been waiting for it for a long time. Plus, Tongning kept her word, and the Ant Queen 2 was still above average. In fact, with a new post-production team, many people felt that the scenes looked more wild and wild. It looked more exciting and crazy. This time, another reason why the audience was so excited was because of Mo Ting. It was obvious that he had never learned any martial arts, but when he fought with the old dragon, he was able to land his fists on flesh. It was very realistic. This made the audience very satisfied. As a result, the box office and reputation soared. This was the current situation of the Ant Queen 2. After watching the Ant Queen 2, film fans were completely in awe of Tongning. No matter what she went through before filming, she was always able to satisfy everyone with the results she produced. She was the one that made domestic sci-fi films take a huge leap forward. As a result, sci-fi fans admired her and even refer to her as the mother of domestic sci-fi films. The Ant Queen 2 has improved compared to the Ant Queen. It's more solid, the story is more complete, and the scenes are more daring. I used to look down on domestic sci-fi films, but now we finally have a domestic sci-fi film. I'm so proud. I don't know why I cried the entire time I watched The Ant Queen 2. Perhaps it's because it's a great film. The reviews were all positive. Of course, this had a lot to do with Hairue's strategy of being close to the public. Because of this, film fans were treated with respect. They could truly feel that Tongning's films were made for the sake of letting everyone see her work. She had no other motives. This was called sincerity. On the other hand, Springfall's previously completed film still hadn't been released yet. Hairue's move was unexpected and caught Elder Nangong off guard. Not only did he fail to predict the release of Parasite in advance, but by releasing it after the Ant Queen 2, it was like throwing a rock into the ocean. After all, with such a good foundation, would the audience still trust it? Previously, Nangong Kwan had planned to release it before the Ant Queen 2 because he wanted to avoid Hairue. That way, the audience wouldn't be so picky and they would think that Parasite was accompanying them through the transition. But now, with a better film, who would want to watch it? Springfall's internal department had already begun to show signs of chaos. Everyone's dissatisfaction with Elder Nangong had reached a boiling point. With the addition of the fact that Parasite might be delayed indefinitely, everyone felt that Elder Nangong was just a vindictive scumbag that didn't care about the lives of others. He even poisoned his own grandson. So what could he do to others? One after another, a few higher-ups in the company handed in their resignations. Nangong Quan had already expected this day to come, so he understood and let them go after paying them their salaries. This, however, became another point of displeasure for Elder Nangong. The agency belongs to us and the money is in our hands. We can do whatever we want. Since when did these people have the right to tell us what to do? They also have their pride, Nangong Quan replied. By the way, don't you know why they left? If you hadn't leaked the news. I told you, I didn't leak anything. Whether you believe me or not, this is the truth, Nangong Quan said forcefully. Grandfather, you better not forget that I'm still the president. If you still want to make a move on me, then go ahead and do it. If I fall for your trick again, I'll kneel in front of you. Let's not talk about these useless things. Let's continue with the plan in the U.S. I've already said that I won't get involved in this matter. Whether the U.S. takes action or not has nothing to do with me. Nangong Quan ended the conversation. I just want to know how you plan to take down the Mo family. Chapter 1184. If you get involved again, I won't call you my grandson anymore. After giving his warning, Elder Nangong turned and left Nangong Quan's office. From the way he spoke, it was obvious that he was serious this time. Nangong Quan did not try to defend himself. He knew that no matter what he said, it was useless. After Su Yuran found out that the Ant Queen 2 was suddenly released, she suspected that her husband had leaked information to the Mo family. But, after returning home, Nangong Quan looked exhausted as he shook his head. If only I had the courage to do that. You really didn't do it? Nangong Quan shook his head again. I told you a long time ago that grandfather wouldn't be able to win against Tongning and Mo Ting. He didn't believe me. What did grandfather say? Grandfather had the same thoughts as you. He also thought I leaked the information. Is grandfather angry? Su Yuran suddenly realized a serious problem. No, little Eggshell said she's playing at a classmate's place today. I'll go pick her up right now. No need. It's not easy for little Eggshell to make friends again. Let her go. Nangong Quan stopped Su Yuran. But, as it turned out, Su Yuran's intuition was correct. Because, that night, little Eggshell still did not return home. The two women sat in the living room with their arms crossed. In the end, they gave the classmate's parent a phone call. But, the parent replied, I personally escorted little Kai Air to the front door. Didn't she go in? After hearing this, Nangong Quan couldn't help but stand up. Little Eggshell had been taken away from the front door. Quan, what should we do now? Nangong Quan did not say a word as he pulled out his phone and gave Elder Nangong a phone call. His voice was no longer as calm as usual. In fact, it was a little shaky. Give Kai Air back to me to guarantee that you won't get involved in this matter again. Kai Air will be staying with me for a while. After everything is over, I will naturally return her to you. Are you an animal? You won't even let your own great-granddaughter off the hook. Nangong Quan asked angrily. I told you, this matter has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. Since you know that Kai Air is my great-granddaughter, I won't mistreat her. That's all. After speaking, Elder Nangong hung up the phone. What did grandfather say? Su Yuran asked. What do I have to do to get little Eggshell back? He said after this is over. Nangong Quan replied helplessly. I seriously suspect that he really is sick. Su Yuran was also angry, but she was also worried. Little Eggshell's only a few years old, yet she's following such a monster. What if she gets traumatized? Plus, little Eggshell has been feeling a little cold for the past few days. Can that jerk take care of Kai Air? Seeing how anxious Su Yuran was, Nangong Quan stretched out his arms and hugged her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What do you have to be sorry for? Su Yuran cried. Everyone else has wronged you. What do you have to be sorry for? This night, the couple without their daughter by their side was destined to suffer from insomnia. So, in the middle of the night, while Nangang Quan was in his study room, Su Yuran couldn't help but give Tongning a phone call. She had no other choice. At home, she could be Nangang Quan's gentle wife and Little Eggshell's adorable mother. But when faced with a jerk like Elder Nangang, there was nothing she could do. Ningjia, tell me, is there a way to free the father and daughter? Tongning never expected that the Ant Queen 2 had such a story behind its release. More importantly, she never expected that Elder Nangang would think that Nangang Quan had leaked the secret. So she and Mo Ting decided to release the film in this way. If Elder Nangang continues to pressure me, I think I might actually kill someone one day. Don't be silly. The reason why Mo Ting and I decided to release the film in this way was because we personally saw Elder Nangang sneak a peek at the actor's scripts. We were afraid that something unexpected would happen. Ningjia, I've actually leaked his plan to you. Compared to that jerk, I'm more willing to trust the two of you. Please, help me save Little Eggshell. After hearing this, Tongning felt a little upset. Yuran, the biggest help I can give you right now is to pretend that you never made this phone call. We won't take any precautions. Otherwise, Little Eggshell may actually be in danger. What else couldn't a person like Elder Nangang do? But we won't run away. We will play along with whatever tricks Elder Nangang wants to play. Don't provoke him any further. Did the two families really have to fight to this extent? What benefit did Elder Nangang get from this? After hanging up the phone call with Su Yuran, Tongning was in a difficult position. Luckily, she and Mo Ting were careful. Otherwise, they would have already fallen into the old man's trap. Meanwhile, Su Yuran did not explain too clearly to the U.S. because she didn't know much about Elder Nangong's plans and methods. Of course, Hai Rui wasn't afraid. It seems we have no choice but to face them head-on. Otherwise, Elder Nangang will vent his anger on the Nangang couple and even a 5- or 6-year-old girl. After hearing this, Mo Ting nodded his head. Even if Su Yuran hadn't leaked the secret, we wouldn't have suffered any losses. That old jerk has probably become a psychopath. I'm starting to hate the mess that the old man created in the past. Mo Ting suddenly said. Don't say that. Grandfather never expected things to get to this point. Let's see what tricks Elder Nangang has up his sleeves. The trick that Old Master Nangang wants to play is probably a weight that neither of you can bear. After all, he was merely using Hai Rui as a cover. His real target was the Mo family's 2 sons. Once Mo Ting and Tongning's attention was diverted, he would naturally have a way to capture the 2 kids, so even though there was a change in plans, Mad Dog Crisis would still be released in the U.S. They simply changed the method, but the result would not change. Since they were going to slander Elder Nangang, why would they care about using shameless methods? When the time came, they could simply accuse the Ant Queen 2 of having a staff member that had come into contact with the script of Mad Dog Crisis. That way, Hai Rui wouldn't have a chance to retaliate. After all, no matter how big Hai Rui was, it couldn't compete with Hollywood and the U.S. film industry. And the best candidate for this staff member was the person that Elder Nangang had previously used. The person with the surname Zheng, the explosives technician. After all, he had previously worked in the U.S. and had even worked on the set of the Ant Queen 2. Although the police were still looking for this person, it was a fact that he had once existed. So, the perfect thing was he could use this identity to slander Hai Rui, and there would be no evidence. Chapter 1185. The old man's viciousness was not something that a normal person could learn. He even held his own great-granddaughter hostage. So, for the sake of revenge, what else couldn't he do? So, at the end of December, Mad Dog Crisis was released in the U.S. However, as an established American film company, the release of Mad Dog Crisis did not garner the attention it deserved. It wasn't until the next day, when news of plagiarism broke out, that the American audience started to pay attention to the film. OMG, there's a rumor that our film plagiarized an Asian film? I can't believe it. But the film was indeed released a little earlier than expected. However, I don't think an Asian could write such a good script. Are you kidding me? Which Asian film isn't plagiarized from the West? The person who said this is quite shameless. Just like that, the popularity of the film increased. After all, it involved a clash of cultures between countries. Plus, Hollywood was a place that everyone in the industry flocked to. So, to say that a Hollywood company plagiarized an Asian film? Even if the Westerners were beaten to death, they wouldn't believe it. Because of this rumor, the Americans began to pay attention to Mad Dog Crisis and the Ant Queen 2. On one hand, the Americans ridiculed the East's techniques, but on the other hand, they praised their own country's progress. They were indeed shameless. Even though Mad Dog Crisis was released so early, the Americans still managed to use it to create hype and profit from it. Not long after, the American film company announced that they would be dealing with the matter seriously. After an investigation, they discovered that an explosives technician with the surname Zung had leaked the script. They also found evidence that the technician worked on the set of The Ant Queen 2. We will be sanctioning the Eastern Film Company and will immediately send a letter to our lawyers. We hope that The Ant Queen 2 will immediately stop screening as a sign of respect for our film. The Americans expressed their stance, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was that their actions caused the audience to fly into the air. Plagiarism was something that no one could tolerate, especially since it was produced by their favorite artist, Tong Ning, and their biggest agency, Hai Rue. If their work couldn't be guaranteed, then there was no hope for domestically produced sci-fi films. Netizens began to express their opinions online. I think the Americans are quite shameless. They're good at distorting the truth. The Ant Queen 2 was released first, yet they're being accused of plagiarizing them. Don't you think it's disgusting? Hollywood is bullying its customers just because it's big, right? I've watched 2 movies. The similarities are in a supporting role, and the lines are similar. But I can't tell who copied who. Does Hollywood need to plagiarize? Forgive me for being blunt, but the same line would be more reasonable if it was used in The Ant Queen 2. But it's completely out of place in that American film. I've seen that American film too. To be honest, it's not even at the level of Hollywood. The plot is a patchwork, and the main character doesn't even have a main storyline. It's just blood and torture. If we're talking about plagiarism, it's definitely America who plagiarized us. All of a sudden, the internet fell into a heated discussion. Of course, Elder Nangong also led the way. Many people began to take a neutral stance. At the very least, they would only be willing to contribute to the box office after confirming the rights to the movie. But The Ant Queen 2 was currently in the midst of its popularity. For something like this to happen, it was like experiencing a snowstorm. Meanwhile, the American team reacted quickly. As soon as they announced that they would be discussing with Hai Rue, they immediately flew to Beijing. On the surface, the American team appeared to be serious and aggressive. But only the people involved knew why they were doing all this. Su Yuran and Nangong Quan sat at home and looked at the news. They were both angry and shocked. If Little Eggshell wasn't in Elder Nangong's hands, they may have already stepped forward in the name of justice. But now that Little Eggshell was in Elder Nangong's hands, the couple did not dare to act recklessly. The public wanted Hai Rue to give an explanation. This time, it involved a sense of pride. If even a company like Hai Rue plagiarized, then what hope did the entertainment industry have? Because of this, Fang Yu personally held a press conference and told the media, "Thank you for your attention to this plagiarism scandal. On behalf of Hai Rue, I would like to give the public a response." Firstly, the script for The Ant Queen 2, produced by Hai Rue and produced by Hai Rue, was written entirely by the CEO of Hai Rue. The original script is here, and there's a time stamp on it. In other words, the contents of The Ant Queen 2 were confirmed before filming even began. At that time, the explosives technician had yet to join the crew. So, how did he get us to plagiarize? Not only that, the outline and the first version of the script in the hands of the actors all have a timestamp on it. In other words, nothing was changed during filming. So, how did he plagiarize? Secondly, I'm sure everyone has heard that during the filming of The Ant Queen 2, there was a man-made explosion. The explosives technician, surnamed Zung, is the culprit. The police are currently trying to track him down. According to one of our actors, the explosives technician has secretly looked at our scripts during his spare time. Is it possible that he escaped to the US and leaked our script to the Americans? Thirdly, we have done a thorough analysis of the contents of both films. I'm sure everyone has an idea of what's going on. From a plot point of view, which film is the most suitable for the overlapping parts of the two films? I'm sure everyone can tell which is more diligent. A film that is created with heart and soul, or a film that wears the crown of Hollywood but has nothing but an empty shell. The following are Tong Ning's exact words. I want to pass them on to everyone. I've never thought about surpassing anyone, and I've never thought about going to Hollywood. I simply want our country's own sci-fi film to rise. I've previously expressed my opinion on Hollywood, and I don't think that we're any better than Hollywood. So, I hope everyone can trust that The Ant Queen 2 is the real deal and has nothing to do with foreigners. As for the American suggestions, I will leave it to our legal team to handle. Chapter 1186. Tong Ning's meaning was clear. There was no need for them to lick Hollywood's boots. She wanted everyone to believe that their country could also produce good films. Fong Yu's words represented Hai Rui. In other words, Hai Rui would never admit to plagiarism. In fact, they even provided evidence of the original work. Their motive was to make everyone believe that The Ant Queen 2 belonged to them and that it had nothing to do with the disgusting foreigners. Of course, Hai Rui's firm attitude gave everyone some peace of mind. I've seen both movies. To be fair, that American movie about Rabid Dog is complete bullshit. Even the Americans are trying to ride on our popularity. I'm sure that this is an independent film from Hai Rui. How could they plagiarize a lousy film? Are the Americans playing a joke on us? I firmly support Tong Ning and The Ant Queen 2. I hope Hai Rui can win the lawsuit and shut the Americans up. Hollywood is starting to decline, and the art battlefield is slowly shifting to the east. So, I don't think there's any reason for everyone to not have faith in Tong Ning. Even if Hai Rui doesn't explain themselves, I will still support Tong Ning. Hai Rui quickly conducted a survey on the Beijing audience. The results showed that everyone was more willing to believe in their own country's films. Even if the other party was Hollywood, they would never admit defeat. This was a huge comfort to Tong Ning and Mo Ting. But the American lawyers still came knocking on their door. Mo Ting asked Lu Che to arrange for everyone to be seated in the meeting room. Afterwards, he told Lu Che to go home and pick up Tong Ning. He also told Fong Yu to bring along his team of lawyers. After all, not everyone had the chance to see Mo Ting directly. Fong Yu's head hurt. He hated dealing with foreigners the most. Although there were reasonable people, the people sitting in front of him today were obviously not easy to deal with. I would like to see the person in charge of Hai Rui regarding the plagiarism. I'm the vice president of Hai Rui, Fong Yu replied firmly. The man shrugged his shoulders and pulled out a document. The copyright laws in the US are very strict. So, before we get to the bottom of this matter, we hope that your company can temporarily stop the screening of the film. Once the truth has been revealed, we will release it again. Of course, the premise is that you can prove that you did not plagiarize. I've never seen someone do it so naturally. Fong Yu laughed, but he did not take the document from the man. If the court in the US decides that you plagiarized, then not only will you have to stop screening the film, you will also have to pay a huge sum of money. Have you Americans finished talking? Fong Yu laughed. Since you're on our soil, then you should act according to our laws. We have also filed a lawsuit against your American company. In fact, we have sent a team of 8 people to represent us. Not only that, we have the outline of the script and evidence. We even hired the world's greatest screenwriter to analyze the story. Let's see who plagiarized who. Fong Yu said calmly. Since you don't want your face anymore, we never thought that you would retreat. But it doesn't matter. We will go through the proper channels. Let's find out the truth together. More importantly, your company seems to have done this more than once, right? If I remember correctly, 5 years ago, your company also paid a compensation of $30 million for a similar case. Are you trying to do the same thing again? Do you think we were easy to bully? The other party had never expected Fong Yu to be so domineering. Furthermore, He had thoroughly investigated their backgrounds. From the looks of it, it was impossible to suppress Hai Rui. Didn't an Eastern film and television company kneel before a Hollywood film and television company? Of course, this was their own confidence. It had nothing to do with anyone else. Things were no longer the same as they were many years ago. Did they still think that they were great? If you continue to remain silent, then I'm sorry, but I won't be accompanying you any longer. Hai Rui's lawyers will contact you soon. As for your request to stop screening and pay compensation, you must be dreaming. After speaking, Fan Yu stood up and left the rest of the matter to the lawyers. Did these foreigners really think that Hai Rui was easy to bully? Although Hai Rui was confident that they would be able to prove his innocence, the entire organization needed to put in a lot of effort. Fan Yu was in charge of dealing with the public, while Lu Che was in charge of collecting evidence. Meanwhile, Mo Ting and Tong Ning couldn't sit around and do nothing. So, they tried to find a way to invite world-renowned screenwriters, directors, and authors to evaluate the content of the incident. So, Elder Nangong's motive had been achieved. Seeing that Hai Rui was spinning like a top, he took the opportunity to announce the release date of Parasite. Trying to gain popularity at this time? Was there something wrong with his brain? Didn't Elder Nangong realize that he was taking advantage of someone when they were down? Of course, he knew. But he still wanted to discuss the Mo family and Mo Ting. Elder Nangong's actions were extremely annoying, but that wasn't his motive. Because they needed to evaluate the content of the film, Mo Ting and Tong Ning had to travel overseas to invite experts. But because of this, Elder Nangong had the opportunity to kidnap the Mo brothers. He had already secretly taken on the role of a teacher for the Mo brothers at an elite school. He had used all sorts of methods. At first, he used money to tempt them. In the end, he used his family to threaten them. He did all of this just so that he could give Mo Ting and Tong Ning a Christmas present. That afternoon, after lunch break, the Mo brothers disappeared from the school. In fact, no one knew how they disappeared. Not long after, the teacher called the police and notified the school. Then he contacted the parents of the parents. At this time, Tong Ning and Mo Ting were at the airport. But as soon as they heard that the child had gone missing, Tong Ning's expression was unreadable. "What's wrong?" "The child has gone missing," Tong Ning said. "Our child has disappeared from the school." After hearing this, Mo Ting immediately left the airport with Tong Ning and personally gave the school a phone call to see if the child had been picked up by a family member or something else. But the school told them that the child had disappeared into thin air during lunch break. At that time, the security cameras in the dormitory were broken, so they couldn't see anything. Chapter 1187. The school immediately blocked the news and began a search. But the culprits seemed to have planned this from the start. Without leaving any traces behind, they took the two boys away. Meanwhile, the teacher in charge of the two boys pretended to cry because he knew he couldn't afford to take responsibility. So, apart from notifying the school and contacting their parents, he also called the police. So, by the time Tong Ning and Mo Ting arrived at the school, the police had already arrived at the same time. They began to investigate everything that was suspicious, but they couldn't find a single clue. But where did the two boys go? "Mr. and Mrs. Mo, I'm so sorry. The school has failed to keep an eye on things. Now that something like this has happened, I will cooperate with the police as soon as possible to find the two young masters. Please trust us." At this moment, Tong Ning couldn't hear a word. She simply stared at the bed that her two sons once lay on without saying a word. Mo Ting looked at Tong Ning worriedly and gestured to the principal. "Please leave for a moment." The principal originally wanted to do some more work for the couple, but seeing Tong Ning in a daze, he did not dare to disturb her any further. "None of this is real," Tong Ning murmured as she ran her hand across the cute blue bed. "Ting, none of this is real. We will find them," Mo Ting replied. "Trust me, we will definitely find them. Now isn't the time to be sad. Listen to me. I should have known. Elder Nangong was willing to poison Nangong Quan just so he could fight for an opportunity to go against Hai Rui. It turns out this was his motive." Tong Ning turned around and looked at Mo Ting in self-blame. I shouldn't have left them. This isn't your fault. The most important thing right now is to find the kids. Tongning remained silent for a moment as she tried to calm herself down. She then nodded her head. We do need to find our sons. But the culprit hasn't left behind any clues. How are we supposed to find them? Will Elder Nangong allow us to find them? He will. Mo Ting replied confidently. Tongning held back her tears as she approached Mo Ting's side, even though she almost sprained her ankle on the way out the door. The two kids from the Mo family had gone missing. They had disappeared from the school for no apparent reason. The media immediately smelled the scent of explosive news. Soon, they surrounded the aristocratic school so that not even a drop of water could escape. Not long after, the news appeared on every major website. In fact, it was the front page headline. Famous artist Tongning and Hai Rui, CEO Mo Ting's beloved son, went missing from school on XX Day. The police are currently investigating and have no further information. Gemini is suspected to have been kidnapped, and Tongning's son has disappeared from school. Famous artist Tongning's beloved son has gone missing. The police are searching for the killer. As soon as Tongning found out that her son had gone missing, she immediately gave Su Yuran a phone call. Give me Elder Tang's phone number. Ning Jia. I've seen the news. Yuran, I don't have time to talk right now. I just want to find my son. Tongning's voice trembled slightly. Su Yuran did as she was told and sent the phone number to Tongning. Afterwards, Tongning followed the string of numbers and gave Elder Nangong a phone call. Give me back my child, Tongning said without saying anything else. I don't understand what you're saying. Things have already gotten to this point. Why are you still pretending? Tongning asked. If you have a problem, come to the adults. What's the point of dealing with a defenseless child? Why? Why? Because I want to see you break down right now. Elder Nangong laughed loudly. Elder Mo laughed out loud. Tongning, tell the Mo family that I won't be returning your two treasures. Treat it as payment for the Mo family. I'll also tell you that I will find my son. Tongning said through gritted teeth, one word at a time. Let's give it a try then. After speaking, Elder Nangong hung up the phone. Tongning did not receive any news from him, but she was certain that Elder Nangong was the mastermind. Mo Ting had already asked Lu Che to find the best detective in the country, and he was currently on his way to the school. The kidnapping of a famous artist child was a sensational news for Beijing. Within half a day, it had become a hot topic. At this point in time, Tongning had no way of knowing what Elder Nangong's bottom line was, nor could she guarantee the survival of her two children. She simply hoped that her two precious children wouldn't end up like Nangong Quan and die silently after being poisoned. That would be too cruel. Over at Hai Rui, Fan Yu controlled the public opinion and was in charge of PR. But the news spread too quickly, so no one could suppress it. It didn't take long before everyone found out about the incident, whether it was the Tang family, friends, or even Elder Mo. After finding out that the mess he had left behind had harmed his two great-grandsons, the usually optimistic old man felt extremely upset. Therefore, they each used their own connections to find a lot of famous detectives in the police world, hoping to find some clues. The scene was very chaotic. It was a tough day, but Tongning couldn't think of anything. She didn't know who to look for or what to do. Meanwhile, Mo Ting continued to expand his search radius in search of any possible clues the two children might have left behind, but after a day passed, they still didn't find anything. Meanwhile, after Nangong Quan found out about this matter, he wanted nothing more than to kill Elder Nangong with his own hands. He never imagined that his grandfather's actions against Hai Rui were just a ruse. Instead, his real target was the Mo family's two children. How despicable was this? He couldn't tolerate it. Quan, what should we do now? Contact Mo Ting and cooperate with the police. Not only do we need to find the Mo family's children, we also need to find our own. This time, Nangong Quan did not hesitate as he gave Mo Ting a phone call and told the police everything he knew, including the fact that he had been threatened. Soon, the police arrived to pick Nangong Quan up. As a result, the search team formed by the two fathers was officially formed. They were currently at the school. Even though it was late at night, they were still in a meeting. This is a private school for nobles. If he didn't have a pass, he wouldn't have been able to get in. So, we've narrowed down to 1 or 2 accomplices. If there were too many of them, it's possible that they would be exposed. Plus, there are people from the school that are very familiar with the 2 children. We've already questioned the teacher in charge of the school. She said that she had no idea what was going on. The other team will apply for an arrest warrant and interrogate the person involved. In other words, they were going to capture Elder Nangong and interrogate him. The police began to analyze the situation. Mo Ting sat in the back with Nangong Quan beside him. When we find the child this time, your grandfather will be dead. Chapter 1188. Nangong Quan did not say a word. It seemed, deep down, he had the same thought, and it was very strong. After a while, he finally said, I'm afraid he won't return the kids to you, even if he dies. I will find my sons. And Mo Ting's attitude was as determined as Tong Ning's. In that case, what do you think? I think we should continue to search the school. When the teacher in charge of lunch breaks discovers that the kids are missing within 20 minutes, how did he manage to take them away from the school? He had no choice but to hide them, Mo Ting replied. I agree with you. Everyone is passionate about finding evidence, clues, and suspicious people outside the school. But what if the kids were still at the school from the beginning and hadn't been moved? What I'm afraid of is Elder Nangong was going to tell them to use drugs or poison. In a moment, let's split up and look for suspicious places in the school. I have a feeling that my sons are nearby. The feeling of blood being thicker than water made Mo Ting unable to close his eyes for even a second. All he had to do was think about the possibility of his 2 children suffering, so much so that he felt like he was about to go crazy. He no longer cared about Hai Rui and had already forgotten about the plagiarism incident, because Fangya naturally knew how to deal with these things. After hearing Mo Ting's words, Nangong Quan patted him on the shoulder. The culprit wants to see you panic and suffer. So, you can't lose your composure. Mo Ting nodded his head, even though he already had the urge to kill someone. Afterwards, the 2 fathers identified all the suspicious places in the school and took advantage of the fact that no one was around to investigate them. Although the police had already done this before, as fathers, they believed they could do it more carefully than the police. Room after room, floor after floor, including toilets and garbage dumps, the 2 of them did not let go of anything. In the end, they found Mo Zichen's shoes in the storeroom on the top floor of the school. As expected, they were hidden here the entire time and were later moved. It didn't take long before the police cleaned up the storeroom and collected evidence. They also took a sample of the fingerprints on the shoes. But in the end, it turned out that the fingerprints belonged to the 2 brothers. The culprit was very cautious and was obviously wearing gloves. The clues were cut off once again. However, this shoe made the 2 fathers very upset. The search continued, and the night was still long. Tong Ning didn't dare to rest, even though she couldn't calm down. Seeing his little family split apart like this, Elder Mo felt extremely upset and blamed himself. Perhaps the one who started the trouble should be the one to untie it. He thought that he had to meet Elder Nangong before he could let go. Therefore, as soon as the sky brightened, he put on the suit that he hadn't worn for a long time and then tidied himself up to look like he did 20 years ago. Then, he drove to Elder Nangong's residence and rang the doorbell, waiting for Elder Nangong to appear. The reunion of 2 enemies wasn't as exciting as he thought it would be. Old man Nangong seemed to have predicted that he would come, so he prepared a seat for him. If you had appeared earlier, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out like this. You wouldn't have caused such a commotion, and your grandson and granddaughter-in-law wouldn't be looking for you everywhere. Ling Ge, it's been so many years, but you haven't changed at all. You're still as ruthless as ever. Elder Mo laughed. Elder Mo laughed. I admit that I didn't do anything wrong 20 years ago. All these years, I've had a clear conscience. But now that you've created such a huge mess, how do you plan to clean it up? In the end, it's still a matter between the older generation. Why are you making things difficult for the younger generation? Why didn't you say this earlier? Elder Nangong laughed. Why are you hiding behind your grandson? Why don't you come out? If you had come out and faced me earlier, I wouldn't have targeted the innocent. I never expected you to be so serious. Elder Mo laughed in self-ridicule. Elder Mo laughed in self-mockery. So, since I'm here today, Brother Lin, can you be merciful and let the kids live a peaceful life? They're just trying to make a living in the entertainment industry and aren't that powerful. If they lose their children, they'll be devastated. If you want me to tell you where my children are, I can. But the price you'll have to pay may be a little heavy, Elder Nangong said as he looked at Elder Mo from the corner of his eyes. You need to think this through. We're already so old. What's there to be concerned about? Elder Mo laughed. Just tell me what you want. Kneel down and admit your wrongdoings. We'll use the underworld's methods to resolve our grudges. From now on, I won't cause any trouble for the Mo family. Kneel. Elder Nangong actually wanted Elder Mo to kneel. In other words, he was admitting that everything he did was wrong. I told you to think this through. Your great-grandson and grandson are waiting for you to save their lives. Elder Mo did not say a word as he pulled out a dagger and stabbed it into the back of his hand. I can't kneel anymore. But I'm aware that there's a way to repay a debt in the underworld. I'll cripple my right hand to repay you for 20 years of loneliness. But don't forget, even if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have escaped your fate of being thrown into prison. Seeing this, Elder Nangong laughed. If you were this straightforward from the start, I wouldn't have wasted so much effort. I've been in prison for 20 years, and you've crippled one of your hands. Once I've vented my anger, I'll be done with it. So, can you let the kids go? Elder Nangong pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and threw it in front of Elder Mo. Stop the bleeding. Your two great-grandchildren live at home. Little Eggshell likes them, so I brought them here. I didn't compromise because of you. I did it because of my great-granddaughter. I wanted to take you down with me, but she's still young. I must say, the Mo family's two rascals are quite likable, Elder Nangong said as he looked up into the sky. I know Mo Ting won't let me off for kidnapping his son, but with this hand of yours, I've still won. After 20 years of grudges, he saw Mo Ting's painful expression and Elder Mo's apology. So, he no longer clung to Mo Ting, even though he didn't think he'd come out unscathed. If you want to sue me, then go ahead. Chapter 1189. Elder Mo didn't feel good, but a little while later, the police arrived at Elder Nangong's home. Because of Nangong Quan's testimony, the police wanted to interrogate him. But Elder Nangong stretched out his hands towards the police. I kidnapped them. Arrest them. In reality, Elder Mo had already hidden the injury on the back of his hand. So, this incident could be turned into a small one as long as it was handled properly. But Elder Nangong didn't leave himself any way out as he confessed everything to the police. Not only did I kidnap the Mo family's children, but I also ordered someone to kill Chiojin, the explosion at Hai Rue, and the poisoning of my grandson. The police pulled out a pair of handcuffs and cuffed Elder Nangong. At this time, Elder Nangong laughed. This is indeed more suitable for me. I also feel that prison is more like a home. Soon, Little Eggshell ran out of the room with the Mo family's two children. All three of them were safe and sound. Great-grandfather, Mo Zishi, immediately ran over to Elder Mo. You're not hurt, are you? Elder Mo asked. Mo Zishi and Little Eggshell both shook their heads. Only Mo Zichin placed his gaze on Elder Nangong. Zichin, I will definitely visit you from now on, Mo Zichin said as he watched Nangong Quan leave. No one knew what he meant, but he did say those words. It seemed Mo Zichin and Elder Nangong had a secret relationship. Soon, Mo Ting and the others received news that the children had been found. So, the three of them immediately rushed over to Elder Nangong's home. As soon as she saw her two sons, Tongning immediately hugged them in her arms. Thank God you're fine. Thank God, Mommy, Mo Zishi said in a low voice. You're hugging me too tightly. Sorry, Mommy was too happy. Tongning immediately loosened her grip. Tongning immediately let go of Nangong Quan, and Little Eggshell pounced into Nangong Quan's arms. What exactly happened? As soon as he saw Elder Mo at Elder Nangong's residence, and saw the wound on the back of his hand, Ting immediately questioned him. That's a grudge between the previous generation. From now on, you won't be threatened anymore, you little brat. Grandfather Mo said casually. After speaking, Elder Mo turned around without saying a word. Ting and the others looked at each other. They had no idea what had happened between the two elders. Why did Elder Nangong suddenly agree to let them go? The media gathered outside and surrounded Elder Nangong's home. Not long after, the appearance of Ting and the others caused the media to be in an uproar. After all, the children had been found safe and sound. So, facing the cameras, the couple did not say a word. They simply protected their child as they left the circle of reporters. All these things were still waiting for the few of them to solve the mystery. But, no matter what, they had to first take the children home and comfort them before dealing with the matter. After returning to Hyatt Regency, Tongning first gave the kids a bath and checked to see if they had any injuries. From the looks of it, Elder Nangong did not intend to hurt them. But Tongning couldn't understand why Elder Nangong, who had staked everything on revenge, would suddenly give up and confess his crimes to the police. "Mommy, will the old man with the mustache go to jail?" Mo Zichin suddenly asked as he helped the two rascals put on their clothes. For such a young child to be able to ask such a question so clearly, Tongning was quite surprised. But she believed that Mo Zichin truly understood what going to jail meant. So she asked, "In that case, son, do you want the old man to go to jail?" Mo Zichin shook his head. "He didn't hurt me. He wouldn't go that far." "In that case, son, let mommy ask you, why did you plead for mercy on behalf of someone that kidnapped you?" Tongning asked curiously. "This strange old man kept saying a lot of strange things to me and my brother. He probably thought that we wouldn't understand, but I did. He said that the reason why he hated that female artist was because she indirectly caused the death of his wife. That's what he said." Mo Zichin's explanation completely shocked Tongning. "Zichin, it's rare for you to say so much to mommy. In fact, it was so complete, and you express your feelings so accurately." He even sat in his room and looked at photos for most of the night. Needless to say, the woman in the photos was Elder Nangong's wife. "I think he's lonely and pitiful." After hearing this, Tongning stretched out her arms and hugged Mo Zichin. Everyone said that Mo Zichin was a warm and sunny man, but in reality, Mo Zichin's emotions weren't as rich as Mo Zichin's. Not only could he express himself, but he was also able to look at things from the perspective of an adult at such a young age. This was unbelievable. "So, did you comfort him?" "I told him that the woman in the photos was beautiful," Mo Zichin replied. "He held onto my hand and cried." In reality, Tongning could understand what Elder Nangong was feeling. He was so close to getting his revenge, but he suddenly felt empty inside, especially when he looked at the cute kids around him, one of whom understood him. Plus, little Eggshell was his great-granddaughter. So, his desire for revenge was slowly extinguished. Then, Elder Mo showed up at his doorstep to apologize, allowing him to finally let go. Elder Nangong's actions proved that there was no such thing as absolute good or absolute evil in this world. After Elder Nangong entered the police station, he refused all visits and refused to find a lawyer for him. He felt that after spending so much time in prison, he was more suited for prison life. That night, the conversation between Tongning and Mo Zichin became a secret between the mother and son. Elder Nangong had left behind a lot of messes. For example, the incident with the American Film Agency and the mess that he caused at Springfall. But, in the end, Elder Nangong came to a realization on his own. Unknowingly, Nangong Kwan's hatred was extinguished. After Elder Mo found out the truth of the matter, he became even more reclusive. The grudge from more than 20 years ago allowed him to understand a lot of things and understand a lot of people. A few days later, Hairue revealed everything that Elder Nangong had done to the public, including how he had colluded with the American Film Agency to frame them for plagiarism. Elder Nangong came clean about the matter, but the Americans refused to admit defeat. Although he was the one that started everything, he no longer had a say in how things developed. Chapter 1190. So, Nangong stepped out and took responsibility for everything. He told Hollywood to cause trouble for Springfall and to stop bothering Hyrule and the Ant Queen too. After all, their actions were a disgrace to Hollywood, and it wasn't worth publicizing to the world. Nangong actions were acknowledged by his peers, so he tried his best to deal with the Americans. But how could Ting allow Nangong to face a problem like this? Hyrule had evidence, and they had the confidence to announce to the world that the Ant Queen 2 was 100% an original film and that Hollywood had cheated. Afterwards, Hollywood responded by denying the agency's work and status. In fact, they even announced that they had stolen other people's scripts multiple times and had lost a lawsuit. Everything was clear. This time, it was indeed produced by an Asian person. It broke the norm and shocked everyone. Although a lot of Europeans and Americans did not acknowledge the East culture and arts, they heard that even Hollywood was going to plagiarize it. This was enough to prove the film's success. As a result, the overseas rights to the Ant Queen 2 sold like hotcakes. Soon, it was announced that the film would be released in theaters all over the world. The foreigners couldn't wait to see the standard of a sci-fi film produced by an Asian. As a result, Tang Ning's fame once again climbed to new heights. In fact, she was invited to many events overseas, but she rejected every single one of them. In fact, she confidently announced to the public, "I will only focus on making films. The work in front of the stage is the job of the actors and celebrities. I hope everyone can give me some personal space and leave the bigger stage for newcomers with potential." After the kidnapping of the Mo family's 2 children, Tang Ning only had one wish. She wanted to spend as much time and energy on her husband and children as possible. At least, she knew what was more important to her. Not long after, Tang Ning heard that Elder Nangong's case had been heard in court. In the end, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison with 1 year of probation. Elder Nangong happily accepted this result. For him, it was a form of release. Just as Elder Nangong was sent to the detention center, Nangong finally received permission to visit him. However, the first thing Elder Mo said was, "This grandson of mine can't even compare to that 3-year-old boy from the Mo family. Forget it. In the future, if little Eggshell really has to choose one of the brothers as her husband, tell her to choose the younger one. He's smart and not the older one. Grandpa, let's go. Don't come again, lest we all feel uncomfortable." The old man was very calm, because he felt that in the end, this was his final destination. When he went out, he really felt uncomfortable all over. In the end, Nangong left with Su Yuran. Just as the old man wished, he would never return. Although it's cruel, I'll do as Grandpa says. He'll feel better this way. Nangong should be thanking Elder Nangong. In the end, he did not commit a bloody murder, nor did he become a murderous maniac, nor did he become a psychopath that harmed children. This could be considered as leaving the Nangong clan with one last shred of dignity. Following this, the New Year's Fei Tian Awards was about to enter the judging phase. This year, Hyrule was going to submit a list of nominees. When the time came, it would once again be dedicated to the Ant Queen 2. But by this time, Tang Ning and Mo Ting no longer cared about their reputation. That night, Tang Ning and Mo Ting did not attend the award ceremony. Instead, they stayed in the study room and discussed the script for The Ant Queen 3. We've already written about father and daughter and teacher and student. What should we write about The Ant Queen 3? Tang Ning asked as she leaned comfortably against Mo Ting. I've already thought about it, Mo Ting replied. Huh? Tang Ning looked at him in surprise. I'll write about a broken friendship, Mo Ting replied. A pair of friends that grew up together. One of them is the smarter one, while the other is the dumber one. The smarter one always asks the dumber one to do things for him. Afterwards, he picks out things that he doesn't want and gives them to the dumber one. He even acts like he's doing everything for them. That's why the dumber one trusts him. Recently, the smarter one decided to take a risk and do something big. But he needed a bait to lure the snake out of its hole. Since he had no other choice, he decided to use the dumber one. The dumber one thought that his smart friend had always treated him well, so he went to a dangerous place. When the smart friend saw that the dumber was willing to do anything, he began to reflect on himself and tried to stop the dumber from throwing his life away. But the dumber one made friends with someone in the same line of work. A passerby exposed the smart friend, so the dumber one began to hate the smart friend. The story will begin with the two of them. After hearing this, Tongning laughed. Although what you said sounds like a tongue twister, I understand what you're trying to say. In fact, I think it's very interesting and can create a lot of twists and turns. President Mo, I think the Ant Queen 3 will be more interesting than the previous two. After all, Mo Ting never wrote superficial things when writing scripts. His content was always deep and explored human nature. The previous two films were relatively simple. They were simply father and daughter, teacher and student. But this time, the friends were more complicated. In that case, I'll have to thank you, Mrs. Mo. Your compliment means a lot to me. Tongning lay on Mo Ting's back and placed a kiss on his cheek. So much has happened. I'm tired. Come to the front, Mo Ting ordered. Tongning walked around him, lay down on Mo Ting's lap, and closed her eyes to get some rest. President Mo, I think we should start filming the Ant Queen 3 next spring. In that case, Mrs. Mo, do you still want me to act? Mo Ting asked gently as he lowered his head. Do you want me to play the smart friend or the dumb fool? What do you think about getting Bei Chendong to play the fool? Tongning asked with a smile. He's a fool to begin with. Why would he need to act? Tongning was still sleepy, so she smiled gently. There are plenty of good actors out there. We can take our time to choose. Mo Ting watched as she slowly fell asleep, so he lowered his head and placed a kiss on her lips. In that case, I love you. Can you hear me? Huh? Tongning mumbled as if she didn't hear him clearly. Chapter 1191. A year later, on the set of the Ant Queen 3. This time, Mo Ting's character was indeed a stupid idiot. In fact, this idiot wasn't easy to act. But the smart friend did not choose Bei Chendong because he was about to have his second child. Instead, the smart friend chose an actor that Superstar Media had scouted out. His name was Li Shengyi, and he was extremely good at acting. The child was now 1 year older. At this time, Tongning often visited Mo Ting on set. She felt that watching him act was a form of enjoyment. But now, she had become his assistant and took care of his daily life. To be honest, Lin Xian's taste was becoming more and more accurate. The actor that she chose was indeed outstanding in all aspects. It was a shame that he had been buried by his previous agency. For some reason, even though his appearance and acting skills were good, he never became popular. He had wasted 10 years of his youth in the industry, so much so that a few strands of white hair had appeared on his head. Now that Tongning was watching him act with Mo Ting, she felt both nervous and excited. Meanwhile, as the assistant director, Bai Juni was filming the scenes of the other supporting actors. Unlike Mo Ting's team of experienced actors, the young actors' scenes were a lot more unfamiliar. Cut. Your expression isn't right. Retake. Cry harder. Relax, relax. Exaggerate your expression. During her free time, Tongning watched Bai Juni direct films and couldn't help but smile. It seemed she hadn't misjudged this madman in the past. After transitioning from artistic films, he seemed to have found his true path and had become addicted to sci-fi. His idea itself was very bold, so the resulting effect was more vivid and full of drama. Xiaoman stood behind Tongning as she watched Bai Juni's scenes. What do you think? Tongning asked. It's artistic, Xiaoman replied. With Bai Juni, the Ant Queen 3 will be even more perfect, Tongning sighed. I heard that you guys rarely celebrate anniversaries after getting married. Xiaoman changed the topic to Tongning's personal life. How did you know? If I'm guessing, President Mo must be preparing a surprise for you, Xiaoman said as she crossed her arms. Sorry, I can't keep things a secret. Tongning smiled gently as she raised her eyebrows seductively. Because to her, every day was an anniversary. There was no need to celebrate. The couple had been together for so many years and had rarely been apart. To her, this was already the biggest gift. All she wanted was for Mo Ting to be together forever. Even so, Tongning had to admit, after hearing about this from Xiaoman, she was filled with anticipation. But Mo Ting didn't show any signs, especially since in 2 days' time, it would be their wedding anniversary. Mo Ting was busy filming and seemed even busier than before. The couple didn't even speak to each other. It was likely Mo Ting had already forgotten about their wedding anniversary. So, where would he find the time to prepare a surprise? Thinking of this, Tongning smiled. Xiaoman's words had actually sunk in, but she never imagined Mo Ting was in such a rush to film because he wanted to make time. That night, while Tongning was asleep, Mo Ting boarded a plane to France with her. When she woke up, she found herself on the plane. "What's going on? Where are we going?" Mo Ting hugged her and said gently, "You've been my wife for so many years, but you've never had a proper vacation. But you can't just take me away like this," Tongning said helplessly as she looked at the pajamas on her body. "I prepared a change of clothes for you. You can change into them when you get off the plane. Is this the surprise you prepared for me?" Seeing that Mo Ting didn't understand, Tongning shook her head. "It's fine, I'll go get changed. Go ahead." Mo Ting did not say a word, nor did he tell Tongning where they were going after they got off the plane. Tongning was completely unprepared as she followed behind Mo Ting. After boarding the plane, she had no idea where they were going. It wasn't until she stood in front of the building that she realized what was happening. This was the place where she stepped onto the international runway for the first time as a model, the place where she took off. At the time, she was only in her early 20s. "Why are you here?" "To watch the show," Mo Ting replied before he led her into the runway. Mo Ting asked as he led her into the runway. "I've booked the entire venue and prepared a set of clothes for you. I want to see you walk again. But I've already forgotten how to walk." "It's a natural thing. How could I forget?" Mo Ting said as he turned around and led her backstage to hand her over to the long-awaited fashion designer. "Mrs. Mo, I've been waiting for you." Tongning had no idea what Mo Ting was planning. She instinctively allowed the designer to take her measurements. Afterwards, the designer disappeared from the backstage. It seemed she was going to tweak the measurements. A few minutes later, she reappeared with a set of clothes. With one glance, Tongning was stunned by the clothes. Because to Tongning, it wasn't just a set of clothes. It was the battle robe that she had worn many years ago. The silver fishtail dress that shone brightly belonged to the supermodel from many years ago. "Shall we put on?" the designer asked. "I'm sure, even after many years, you will still look beautiful in this dress. Can you believe it? This dress is the same dress that you wore many years ago." Tongning was surprised by the designer's words. President Mo searched for it for a long time before he found it. More than 10 years? Tongning suddenly couldn't remember. But she felt like she had suddenly returned to her younger self. "Are you ready? Let's go on stage." Dressed in a long dress, Tongning's supermodel aura once again returned to her body. She simply nodded her head. Just like the time when she was young and inexperienced, she used her steps to conquer the audience. But this time, Mo Ting was the only one in the entire venue. Mo Ting looked at her from afar. He imagined she was still the same young and inexperienced girl. He imagined she once carried hope onto the stage. As the music began to play, Tongning's confidence soared. Afterwards, her pose was exactly the same as it was many years ago. Not long after, Mo Ting stood up and walked onto the runway. He wrapped his arms around Tongning tightly, not leaving a single gap between them. "Why did you arrange it like this?" "I wanted to see what you looked like before you met me." Mo Ting replied gently. "I wanted to see how beautiful you looked when you first stepped onto the international stage. That was nothing, because after I met you, I finally found the real me." Tongning kissed him as the couple stood on the runway affectionately. "In the past, I always wanted to be worthy of you, so I worked hard and risked my life. Over the years, I kept asking myself if I was worthy of you." Afterwards, Mo Ting gave her an affirmative answer. "Of course, you are my queen." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.